Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight our guest is Terry Palmer. He's the author of Science of Spirit Possession. We're going to talk about this subject tonight. Now, a lot of your minds probably go to like demonic possession. Yeah, we're going to get into that, but possession can take many different forms: automatic writing, channeling. There's so many different ways to talk about what actual spirit possession is. If you think about your own body, I mean, what you're moving your body, you are spirit and moving your body. It's just switching characters. There's a lot of concepts to get in tonight, and I've been reading his book, thoroughly enjoying it. It's a lot of heavy reading, but it is pure science and psychology of spirit possession, and I'm loving it. It's a unique book in its own. And of course, what we do every Sunday night is the World Wide Web of Weird, and we got some good stuff for that. So let's go ahead and get rolling into the show. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight's guest is Terry Palmer, author of Science of Spirit Possession. It's going to be a great topic tonight. I've been really looking forward to this show. Terry will be joining us after the World Wide Web of Weird, and we will take phone calls later in the show. Actually, you can call in now if you want. You just might have to wait on hold until I call you. It might be a while, so you might want to wait. You can call in if you want to be the first caller and wait. You can. You'll hear the audio of the show. There's a number of ways you can call in: 219-230-4444 or Skype ID OOJBland00 are the two lines you can call in either by Skype or phone. But let me bring on my beautiful co-host, Jamie D. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
Doing great. Really excited about the topics tonight.
Me too. Like I said, it's spirit possession everybody's mind goes right to demonic. It goes right to the dark side. I'm guilty of it too. But when we get into this, it's really going to be talking about the whole idea: what is consciousness? What is our spirit? Life after death, and then psychological issues like multiple personalities, and even people making up their own inner demons from their own psychology. It's a lot of deep concepts. I've really been thoroughly enjoying the book. And Terry was nice enough. He sent me this book. It's not a cheap book. It's a textbook. And this is really nice cover, really nice book. He even autographed it for me for a kindred spirit, Terry Palmer. Thank you, Terry. Can't wait to have him on. We'll be calling him. He's across the pond all the way in England, so it's late for him, but I'm glad we have him. All right, let's do what we do every Sunday night, is the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, we're going to start off. This one's a few weeks old, and I actually think it was actually caught in August. It was. This is from Fox News, but we're behind. We had some breaks in the last month. I had my son's birthday, and then we had a show, and then I had my wife's birthday, so we didn't have a show then either. So we're a little behind, so we might have some stuff you've already heard about, but it's the World Wide Web of Weird. We got to cover it. So this one's from FoxNews.com. UFO spotted over Myrtle Beach, disturbing onlookers. Ooh. All right, for those listening on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network, we are a webcast. You can come watch the show if you want, because we do share videos and show photos on our Facebook page, Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where you can see it, but I try to narrate the best I can, so you can get an idea what we're talking about here. Jeffrey Chan's our World Wide Web of Weird engineer here is going to be sharing these videos. This is a video he's got here. Mysterious lights were spotted above Myrtle Beach, South Carolina in August, raising questions about what the lights were and where they came from. UFOs over Myrtle Beach. Video catches mysterious lights over Resort Town, reported the State Columbia local newspaper, noting that the video was also posted to UFO stalkers and UFO-centric website. The video has also been uploaded to YouTube with a description noting a massive spaceship was spotted apparently hovering over the beach during a thunderstorm. The person who submitted the video to MUFON said they were taking pictures in a time-lapse video of the thunderstorm and did not notice the strange lights until they got home. Taking pictures from the time-lapse of the incoming storm, the person wrote on the website, I was taking the picture off the edge of a long pier after dark, so there's no reflective surfaces around. I did not notice the objects until I returned home and checked the photograph and video. The video was taken on August 5th, but was only uploaded on the website on October 4th, 59 days later. And for people listening, it's basically you see the storm, you see Myrtle Beach there, you see the Ferris wheel in the background, but up in the storm you see these little, and our video never does it justice, so go to YouTube, you can look up this Myrtle Beach, or go to the article at Fox News, but you can see like these little white orb lights in the thunderstorm. I thought that was pretty interesting. And, is it a massive ship, or is it a bunch of different ships? I don't know. I seen lights down below it and above it, and it doesn't take any kind of like consistent pattern of a shape of a ship of any kind. I don't know. If it is a ship, it would be huge. It would be massive. Maybe it was. We've had a few of those sightings recently in Minnesota that they say there's a casino lights, and other people say no way. It seems a little bit similar in the fact of the lights, but they're not as perfectly shaped in a circle like that footage is. So who knows? There's been a lot. We had that article like a month ago that said UFO sightings have been down since 2014. I just feel like people aren't reporting them. I feel like they're up. I feel like there's more lately. At least lately, there feels like there's been a lot more UFO sightings and some really good ones. All right, well, let's move on. This is from Helen's Tale Weebly. Strange being that does not seem to be from this world leaves a selfie for MUFON. So people listening, again, this is some narration here. There's this picture. This is from, like I said, Helen'sTaleWeebly.com. It's the only site I found anything on it. There's not much information on this at all, but I find it interesting. Remember Mac and Me? Remember that movie Mac and Me? That's what this alien reminds me of in this picture a little bit. Oh, Rob Autry joined us from St. Augustine, Florida. How you doing tonight, Rob? Welcome to the World Wide Web of Weird. Oh, you're not, no sound.
Pretty good. I do better if I turn my mic on.
Yeah. Did you ever see Mac and Me?
Yes, I did.
Okay, does that look like the Mac and Me alien a little bit?
Yes,
just a little bit? Except he doesn't have like the buggy eyes. He has the more dark, cryptic black eyes that are definitely associated with the grays. But see, he's got the ear. Looks like he has a little ear, just like the Mac and Me guy did. That was such a horrible E.T. ripoff movie. Yeah, what was it they advertising in that? Pepsi or something was like the big sponsor of that movie. Like there was a Pepsi can in like every shot, or was it Coca-Cola? I can't remember which one it was, but I think they funded the whole movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, would an alien, like, hey, you want to believe in aliens? Here's a selfie. There's like this strange light behind them too, just to make it even harder to see. But what I find interesting about it is the detail. Even with that lighting, you look at the hair. You can see the fuzz. Like, typically people, I don't think, describe grays as having fuzz or hair.
Yeah.
One of me wants to know if it's just a cat, like one of those hairless cats.
Yeah.
That, got up in front of somebody's camera and a light, and they said, oh, here, send this to MUFON, tell them it's an alien.
Could be a digicabra.
Yeah, a digicabra. Trademark Todd Reinert. Yeah. All right.
Good one.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. But it's interesting. Selfie by an alien, We need a photobomb by an alien. All right. Speaking of photobombs, this one photobombed in a teen's car. This is from InsideEdition.com. They don't only cover the celebrity gossip and stuff. They cover ghosts too. Ohio teen captures image of what appears to be a ghost boy in a car. He says, I just can't explain it. This was from October 9th from, like I said, InsideEdition.com. An Ohio teen believes he has captured an image of a ghost inside his car while trying to photograph a beautiful sunrise. Yeah, right. An avid nature photographer, Troy Vance, 15, told Carter News Agency he was really creeped out after zooming in on the picture. I love how this article really frames it like he was just trying to take pictures of the sunrise. No, I've looked into it. This kid's a paranormal investigator. He's totally into this. I mean, he's totally doing spirit box sessions in his car and stuff. I decided to take a picture of the truck with the sunrise in the background as I thought it looked really nice. What kids are taking pictures of sunrises anymore? Really? Van said, didn't notice anything at the time, but after I uploaded it to Facebook, I had people commenting on it and asking me if I was sitting in the front seat. Well, where's the sunrise? I just see the car. It's probably zoomed in. So Vance took a closer look at the image. I zoomed in, yeah, that's what he did, and I saw the ghostly face in the windshield. He said, "My heart just stopped. I was in complete shock." He added, "There was no one in the truck. I just can't explain it." Vance said he believes the image shows a boy who drowned in the nearby lake in the early 1900s. It looks like a little boy and sitting in the front seat. It's so freaky. I think it could be him, he says. You know, is it legit? I don't know. It looks like a real little boy sitting there, but he does look a bit pale. He does look a bit drowned. And, yeah, I don't know. Next week for our Halloween show, which I'm so excited about, and we'll talk at the end of the World Wide Web about, but I want to mention I am going to do two World Wide Web of Weirds. The normal one, and then we're going to do a Spookathon one, which is going to cover some of the best of this last year's ghost evidence, photos, and stuff we've had in the World Wide Web of Weird. So I cannot wait. I'm so excited to do that. All right, let's move on to number 4 here. Right, number 4. All right, so this is from mirror.co.uk. As soon as my article loads here, any day now. Yep, there we go. Mom terrified by spine-chilling demon voice recorded on phone in hospital corridor. Catherine Lawrence was with her toddler daughter when she recorded the odd noise on her mobile phone. So she's walking down this hallway. We're going to listen to this. I have a video where it's a long video and then a short cut of it. So go ahead and play it, Jeff. That was the voice she heard. She can't explain. You hear the stomping of her daughter's feet down the hallway. I think it'll replay here in a second, that voice. I made a shorter edit of it here in a second. It is kind of creepy. She noticed it on playback. And Mama 2 as told how she had freaked out after she claims to have captured a demonic voice on camera in a hospital corridor. Catherine Lawrence had taken her 2-year-old daughter to Royal Devon Exeter Hospital when she filmed the spooky video on her phone. The 4-year-old said she started taking pictures and video because it felt like a scene from 2006 horror movie Silent Hill. And I grew up kind of in a hospital. My mom worked in one for 17 years, and it was an old hospital and had old sections like this where there's nobody in it. Like, they weren't using that section anymore, and you'd find yourself lost down a hallway and going down it, and yeah, you get a little creeped out in some of these hospitals. She said, I had to take my daughter to A&E in the hospital. We went in the wrong entrance, and got totally lost down a dark corridor. I started taking pics and filming on my phone as it reminded me of Silent Hill, and I love creepy stuff. We were totally alone with no one behind us, and while the corridor was dead quiet. After watching the film back at home at a little, like 6 seconds in, you can clearly hear some creepy demon voice. Okay, always got to say demon. Say something, and around 26 seconds, there's another couple of words. Now, I don't hear the other couple words 26 seconds later. I didn't. I replayed it.
Could this actually be like pipes in the walls, like water pipes?
I'm good with human voices. It sounds like a human voice.
It's demons.
There is no Zool, or there is no Dana. There's only Zool.
There's only exactly.
I don't know. It's a good point. There could be old piping or something, but it does sound like a human voice. Catherine posted the video to her. Yeah. Catherine posted the video to her Facebook wall and has had a mixed reaction from her friends who claimed to hear something different in the video. One person commented, I would be running out of there. Did you hear it only when you were watched it back? Well, another one said, what the heck, Catherine? That's too freaky. I just heard a man's voice saying, tell me. I don't hear the tell me. It almost sounds like there's a little bit of a laugh in there, like kind of a creepy one. One of Catherine's friends also said that it sent shivers down her spine. It is creepy. I don't know. Hospitals, I mean, I get creeped out of hospitals. I grew up in one, but I still get creeped out. I feel like you're always being watched. I feel like there's spirits there. I lived across from one, and we had this corner of a wall that pointed towards the hospital, and all these faces started coming through, and it was like 2 a.m. Me and my wife saw it coming through the corner that pointed at the hospital. It was like these faces of ghosts coming through our wall. We both could see it, and I swear to God, it was coming from the hospital. It was really weird. All right, let's move on. This is number 5 on the World Wide Web of Weird. A young vampire found buried in an Italian cemetery. Good story for upcoming Halloween. Unexplained mysteries here has young vampire found buried in an Italian cemetery. The eerie practice, which echoes similar rituals performed across medieval Europe, was designed to prevent the deceased from rising from the grave as a vampire or other undead horror. During the 5th century, Italy was struggling with a deadly malaria outbreak, and this particular cemetery had been set aside for babies and children who were most vulnerable. The people at the time feared that the bodies might come to life again, spreading disease further. The 10-year-old has come to be known locally as the vampire Luganano. I probably butchered that. There's a very unusual mortuary treatment that you see in these various forms in different cultures, especially in the Roman world, that could indicate this was a fear that a person might come back from the dead and try to spread disease of the living. In another part of the cemetery, a young girl's body has also been weighed down with heavy stones. We know that the Romans were very much concerned with this and would even go to the extent of employing witchcraft to keep the evil, whatever it is, contaminated body from coming out, said Professor David Soren from the University of Arizona. I brought this article up, too, because me and my wife were just talking about, with all the zombie popularity, Walking Dead and all that stuff. It's interesting how, the term zombie's not been with us that long, but the idea has been with us for thousands of years, that people have always feared the dead coming back. And why? Was there some incident of that happening in our ancient past where the dead did rise? Were there zombies in our past? Is this why people have this fear of the undead, and they, would weigh their child down with stones to make sure it didn't come back? I've always wondered.
Did you watch Katrina's brain scan?
I've seen a little bit.
They actually
Yeah.
talk about where the origination of zombies did come from back when people were really, really sick. But go back, I'll send you the link. But that's where the zombies had originated.
Well, yeah, a lot of times it was a fear of sickness and all that, but
they
it's
would just drop dead, like right where they were at.
But I tell you though, if you look at our burial ceremonies over thousands of years, why did we start burying the dead? Why did we weigh the dead down? We've seemed to always had that in different cultures across the world, a fear of the dead rising. Many different cultures. I always found that interesting.
What's the old thing that they used to put a bell in some people's coffins?
Well, that was a fear of being buried alive.
Yeah, buried alive.
Okay.
That was from a fear of being buried alive, which I would share if I lived back in that time. I'd be
no
like,
doubt.
I'm gonna order my tombstone with a bell, please. Make it a really big bell.
Let's go ahead and bury him.
Yeah, really big bell that a lot of people can hear, because they better come and undig my butt up out of the grave. Okay, let's move on. We're running out of time here. We got a great guest tonight. All right, speaking of funeral practices, this was a bad funeral practice here in modern times. This is from WXYZ.com. Police, 11 infants' bodies found in ceiling of former Detroit funeral home. In Detroit, the bodies of 11 infants and stillborns were found in the ceiling of a former funeral home at Detroit's East Side Friday evening, according to Detroit police. It happened at the former Canterbury Funeral Home on Mack Ave. Officers say the remains were found in boxes and 2 small caskets. The property's current owner, Naveed Syed, said he called police after making the shocking discovery. It's not clear how long the remains have been there, but he says he was told at least one of the bodies had been there since 2009. Investigators are now working to identify the remains. The Cantrell Funeral Home was shut down this past April due to several violations of deplorable, unsanitary conditions. Investigators found bodies not stored properly, obviously, including at least 2 that reportedly appeared to be covered in mold. Oh, my God. The Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs is also investigating a disturbing case. And, you hear these cases of people that, take people's money and say, yeah, we're burying or we're cremating, and then they don't do anything, like store them out in some woods or something like that. You've heard these stories before. But, man, this isn't going to be a funeral home anymore. It's going to be a community center. And I think it's going to be a haunted community center, because it's like, it seems like if you desecrate a grave, you desecrate a body, you don't properly bury the body, it's like a surefire way to get some haunted activity.
Yeah.
All right, one more. Just want to briefly mention this because this was so viral, and there's just not a lot of information. There's one YouTuber out there putting plenty out there. This comes from AboveTopSecret.com. Did YouTube go down to erase a live stream of an object hitting the moon? This has been all over the internet. There's a rumor. There's no proof, only speculation. This is from the author of this article. I dismiss such claims except in the instance there appears to be an amazing capture of another event by a third party around the same time the event appears to be related. And this YouTuber, let me make sure I get his name right. didn't put it on here. I have to open up the video. Darn it. Let me open up the video so I can make sure I get the right name on this here. This YouTuber is, if you can find this, is John X Army. John X Army, big YouTuber. He captured, and Jeff replayed it there. I think he played it. It's night vision he had. At the same time YouTube went down, and they say there was a stream of wherever the stream is, nobody's shown it yet, and I've seen, of something hitting the moon. Well, he also got this snake-like object flying through the sky, and I guess heading towards the moon. Some people said they thought it could be meteors. I don't know. I'd love to know if anybody has the video footage of something hitting the moon, but my idea is, why would they shut down YouTube just to take down one video because of some alien ship that was caught? Yeah, there it is, Johnny X Army. This says Johnny EX Army on here, but why would they, it's JONX Army. That's what it is.
What happens is ice goes around, to prove that the world is round. So they go up there and they're constantly going around recording footage, and so people sit and watch, and every so often you'll see an anomaly or some sort of UFO to the distance. Well, then ice will cut. The screen goes blue real fast, or the astronaut will actually cover the glove.
Yeah, we've had it. We've showed lots of that. But why would they shut down the whole YouTube stream?
I don't think they would shut the whole stream.
Yeah, like everybody, they'd shut down just the one YouTube stream. They wouldn't have to shut down YouTube all the way. Like, they shut it all down. Like, YouTube was down. So I find that I don't know. I find it hard to believe. Right. But that's it for the World Wide Web of Weird. We got a great guest tonight, Terry Palmer, so I want to get to our first commercial break. Remember, we don't play copyrighted music anymore right now. Hopefully here in the near future we will. But next week we are going to have our Halloween show. I don't want to just quickly remind people of that. We're going to have Katrina Cooper and Rhodey Speak on, of course, the Paranormal Soup team, and Heather Wade is supposed to join us for live ITC, and of course we're going to have the World Wide Web of Weird and all that, so it'll be a fun time. I can't wait. But our guest tonight is Terry Palmer, author of Spirit Possession. So we will be back after this commercial break. Just hang in there, guys. Back with you in just a few seconds. Minutes. What did I say, seconds? I wish it was only seconds. All right, we'll be right back with you. All right, and also, guys, don't forget you can call into the show. The lines are open. It's 219-230-4444. Skype ID OOJBland00. You just have to wait on hold till I call you. You might wait a little bit if you call in too early, but you can call in. The lines are open. All right, guys, we'll be back with you, like I said, in just a few minutes. I just had to get the phone numbers out. All right, we'll be back.
Ranging.
240, nominal to profile.
We're in the pipe, 5 by 5.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Terence Palmer. He has a degree in psychology from Canterbury Christ Church University and a master's degree in the study of mysticism and religious experiences from Kent University. He's been a hypnotherapist for 20 years and a spirit release practitioner for 12 years. His doctorate was awarded by the University of Wales at Bangor for his thesis on scientific conceptual frameworks and research methods on the 19th-century research of F.W.H. Myers. He is the first practitioner to be awarded a PhD on the topic of spirit release therapy in the UK. Terence is a member of the Society of Psychical Research and Scientific and Medical Network, and he's a fellow of the Royal Society of Medicine. Dr. Palmer is an active lecturer encouraging UK institutions to take up the challenge and to test the efficiency of spirit release therapy under controlled conditions. You can go to his website at TRENCE.co.uk. Tonight, we're going to get into this subject of spirit possession, the science of spirit possession. And I've been reading his book. And you know, it's not just about, like I said, a lot of people's minds go to the demonic or the darkness of spirit possession, and a lot of fear. I know I have my fear of it, but there's more to it than just the demonic end of it. There's spirit possession of all kinds. Think about people speaking in tongues, the Holy Spirit. Think about your own consciousness moving your body. You're talking, you're moving, you are a spirit controlling your body. And what frightens people is when another spirit takes over, or is it another multiple personality? These are the subjects we're going to get in tonight. And yes, we will have the phone lines open. You'll be able to call in at 219-230-4444 or our Skype ID, OOJBland00. But let's get to our guest. All right, had a little hiccup there. Hold on a sec. Almost lost my guest. You still there with us, Terry?
Yes, I'm here, Jason.
All right, awesome. Almost lost you. Almost hit the wrong button. Thank you so much for joining us all the way across the pond in England there. You're in England, right?
Yes, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, like I said, I've been reading your book, and it's very textbook to give people an idea. But that's kind of what I love about your book, Terry, is because it really gets into the science and psychology of spirit possession. It's there's no fluff. You're really dealing in facts and details of what you do. I mentioned in the intro, you really based a lot of your work off of Frederick Myers, which was like a pioneer of the spiritualist movement, or very before the spiritualist movement. A lot of concepts I see that you inquire from him. How did you get involved in spirit release therapy?
The short answer to that question is I was working as a regular hypnotherapist, as a psychologist, and I was being presented with cases that that challenged the traditional view of working with people with hypnosis. I was being presented with cases that didn't respond to the suggestions and didn't fit the model. So I had to stop working and go away and research and find out precisely what I was dealing with. And that led me into studying mysticism for my master's degree. And it was whilst I was studying mysticism at Kent University that I discovered the work of Frederick Myers, one of the founding fathers of the Society for Psychical Research. And this provided me with a lot of answers to the questions that I had been asking. And I decided that it would be a good course of action to take to follow through and become trained in the art and skill of releasing spirits from people using clinical methods rather than religious exorcism.
So you're not reading like the Latin exorcism. You're using a different method to release the spirits from people.
Well, that's right. Religious exorcism, as I understand it, just uses the rituale romanum and uses a ritualistic procedure of casting out the demon. But what I discovered is that spirit possession, the different types of spirits, they're not all demons at all.
Right.
You have spirits of deceased people. So you need to be able to communicate with them, in a sensible, compassionate way.
Of course, everybody, when they think of possession, they think of The Exorcist, They think of Linda Blair's head turning around and saying foul-mouthed things they can't say on radio. But when you talk about, it's not all demons, it's spirits, it makes me think of the concept of the hungry ghost, the Tibetan Buddhist concept, that spirits are looking for things that they hungered for in life. And I don't know, how much you've run across this doing this kind of research and doing the spirit release therapy. I've always had this feeling, I had my own little psychic insights, that one of the biggest things I see is bars and drinking, and that spirits that were really alcoholics, to be honest, hang around those who still drink. You know, they want the living. They get some kind of feed off of that. I get bad mojo from bars. I've said this for years. And I've always thought of that idea of the hungry ghost. Do these spirits attach to people for these kind of things, for the relive the things they wanted and they loved in life?
Yes, they do. Absolutely. People who are alcoholics in life or drug addicts, when they die, if the spirit doesn't move on from the earth plane to the realms of spirit, if they remain earthbound, then they will attach to a living person in order to continue the sensation that they enjoyed whilst they were alive. It's very, very common.
That's what I felt.
Yeah, very common. Yeah,
it's one of the things I kept thinking about as I was reading your book about that. Something I've told people this, my feeling about, you know, a lot of, especially the dingier bars, but I always feel like I like that presence. I feel it there, and it just makes you wonder. I mean, people have to take responsibility for their own actions, of course, but it makes you wonder how much it does help fuel addiction.
Well, it helps fuel addiction an awful lot. I mean, on a day-to-day basis, I'm dealing with cases every day. This is my day job, and we're finding people being affected by the spirits of the deceased because of their addiction to drugs or alcohol.
I've always wondered if that's a factor, and that's what I find so interesting. You know, you take a very, you know, a professional approach to this topic, with the way to deal with people. You're, like you say, you're not throwing holy water on them. You have your method of releasing the spirits, and it's, you know, it's not like that ritualistic thing. It's a scientific research. You're trying to, you know, look into this and try to really treat a person dealing with this. So if you release that spirit that is maybe fueling that addiction, does that help with that person with that cure that addiction?
Yes, it does. It relieves the pressure. What we've found in clinical practice is that once you've relieved a person of the spirits that are reinforcing the problem, once you've got the spiritual dimension cleaned up, so to speak, then any kind of further therapy or rehabilitation program is more likely to succeed because you haven't got the hidden spiritual dimension interfering.
It makes you wonder. I mean, you talk about trying to get the professional community to recognize what you do. It makes you wonder, like, why they you know, they have to ask themselves. They've been doing, you know, psychologists and all that. You know, they're good people, but they've been doing the same thing, trying to help people, and they're fighting the same battles. If they would incorporate this idea or this concept, do you think it would radically change therapy for addicts?
Well, it would, but you see, what we're dealing with, I'm speaking as a psychologist, what you need to understand is why people believe what they believe and why do they do what they do. Why does the medical profession and psychiatry in general find it difficult to believe that this sort of approach works? It's a very, very complex thing to understand.
For you, where did this start? Like, what was the first case that really, like, convinced you this was real? I mean, it had been something besides what you were reading about Frederick Myers. There had been that step that took you over to, like, this is real. People really can be possessed by a spirit. Because I've had that moment, and knowing that that's possible, and it's a scary moment. I have to admit, it was a scary moment for me when I realized that it's possible. Because, I mean, you're talking about something taking over you.
Well, for me, it's been a journey that's taken more than 20 years. And I've experienced events and witnessed events that I didn't fully understand. And I was not in a position to be able to mentally process them. But I'll give you an example of a key stepping stone on my journey. I was developing my skills in the early days as a hypnotherapist before I went into practice. And I was working with a young man who came to me for help with a confidence problem. And as I was working with him, he said to me, someone wants to speak with you, but it isn't me. So this was really the beginning of a long series of conversations I had with a spirit that possessed him. And this spirit introduced himself by name, and I came to learn from this spirit that a book that I was writing at the time was actually being inspired by him. This spirit was putting thoughts into my head.
Oh, wow. So, like, it was already communicating with you, and it just found you doing a hypnotherapy session and jumped into the person you were doing the session with. Is that
That's right.
Wow.
This came as a complete shock and a surprise, but a very, very pleasant surprise, because it was a very, very kind and very wise and intelligent spirit. In fact, many of your listeners would be familiar with his name. At the time, he introduced himself to me. I'd never heard the name before, and I had to find out who he was. His name was Lao Tzu.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, that's a pretty big name for, we got one of the biggest philosophers there.
Well, that's right. It's a big name in ancient Chinese philosophy. And what I learned from him over the years and up to the present day is that he is my spirit guide and teacher. So the philosophy of Taoism is something that I've learned to incorporate in my daily life.
So you were writing a book, and a lot of your concepts you didn't know at the time, I'm guessing, were Taoist kind of concepts?
Well, that's right.
Wow.
What had happened, you see, is in 1990, when the UK economy collapsed and the business that I'd owned and built over many years, I was a transport distribution consultant and exhibition and conference organizer. Had nothing to do with spirituality or psychology at all. It was a completely different profession. And this collapsed under the failure of the British economy at the end of the Thatcher era. And I began to ask fundamental questions. Why is this happening? What did I do wrong? I was finished up homeless and penniless after working as a successful businessman for many years. And I needed to understand why. So in answer to my questions, the spirit of Lao Tzu took possession of this young man and gave me the answers. But he gave me the answers in such a way that I had to think, I had to explore the principles of Taoism from a position of complete, utter naivety. I knew nothing. And one of my favorite concepts within the philosophy of Taoism is the value of the empty vessel. In Taoist philosophy, the value of a vessel is in its emptiness, because it can then be filled. So at the time, I was mentally speaking, intellectually speaking, I was an empty vessel. So new knowledge could come in uninterrupted, and this is where the book came from. That my first book, the Tao of Natural Cycles, was as an uneducated layman before I went to university. Immensely valuable.
How old were you?
How old was I at the time?
Yeah.
I was 45 years old at the time.
Wow. So I mean, why would Lao Tzu pick you? Like, how did he hone in on? Here's Terry Palmer. He's an empty vessel right now. I'm going to fill him full of Taoist concepts, and he's going to write this great book. I mean, is Lao Tzu? He didn't reincarnate. Obviously, he's just hanging around waiting to influence. This isn't a question of disbelief, Terry. I've heard these kinds of stories from other people, and you're not the only one that's had channeling experience. There's a lot of documentation of people writing. I mean, even we've talked about on the show about a lady who wrote as Mark Twain. So I definitely believe in that possibility. How do you think why did he pick you?
I'm not sure that he did pick me. I was asking fundamental questions, and this particular spirit guide volunteered to answer them. That's the only answer I can give to that question.
Well, you hear about spirit guides. They hone in on. People get spirit guides for the lessons they need in life, and some people do claim they have some pretty big name spirit guides.
Yes, I I can't really give you a satisfactory answer to this. Why do particular guides attach themselves to a particular person? I think it's probably a lot to do with the path that they've chosen, their life path. I don't really know. I mean, there's so much to learn. There's so much we do not know. And my philosophy is that when you learn something new, something of value, it has to be shared with others. You can't keep it to yourself. If it's of value, then it's of value to humanity. And we are, each and every one of us is just a small cog in a huge machine. We are instruments of communication, and it's wrong to keep this knowledge to yourself. It has to be shared.
You know, when your client, or I don't know if it was client but your patient, or whatever, you're doing the hypnotherapy with, when you woke up, did you ask him, like, do you know who Lao Tzu is? Did he know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did. I would have conversations with this spirit long into the night with the young man in deep trance. It was as if he was, his consciousness had gone somewhere else. This is dissociation. His consciousness had dissociated from the here and now. And I was having these conversations with this spirit long into the night. For several weeks this went on. And the young man was quite happy to do this because he'd come round to my house and I'd feed him, treat him to dinner. We became quite good friends. It was an interesting interlude, an interesting experience for both of us. We both learned an awful lot.
Well, what was it like when, you put him under? I mean, are you able to see in, like, his expressions the personality change?
Yes. In fact, what would happen, he'd go into trance and he'd slump in the chair just as a person would if they were asleep. And then when the spirit of Lao Tzu took possession of him, his body would come upright and his head would come upright and his eyes would open and he'd look at me. And I could see that it was not him.
I've had that experience of somebody that I felt was taken over at a time, and you could tell it's like not them. I know that look. It's like a different look in their eye. They say the eyes are like the window to the soul. Well, you can see it. You can really see it, and to me, it was kind of scary. But what was the point that? I mean, I'm sure at first, when it first started happening, you were skeptical. But what was it the moment that you just like, this is real? Like, I'm really talking to Lao Tzu, I mean, at the time, did you even know who Lao Tzu was?
No, I didn't. I had no idea. And it was at a time when I decided that I needed to become educated. So I wanted to go to university. I'm 45 years old, remember. And I'd already had a career in business. Without any university education. So I enrolled to go to university. And it was whilst I was taking the pre-university college course, there was a young man on the same course, and I was talking about this business with Lao Tzu, and I had no idea who he was, and this other chap on the course said, "Oh, I know who Lao Tzu is. I've got a book of his at home." And the next day he brought this book in and showed it to me, and I was amazed. I was gobsmacked. Here was a revered ancient sage that I'd never heard of, but someone that the scholars had been writing about for years. And I said then, to the young man that I was working with, I said, "Why? Why should this spirit take possession of you and speak to me? I don't understand why." But then as the years have unfolded and I've learned more, it's the business of the empty vessel again, the naivety, the lack of knowledge, the empty vessel that is the valuable means of communication. It's very difficult to educate someone who's already been educated and filled with philosophical ideas. It's very difficult to change those ideas.
Can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Exactly. And this takes us back to the earlier question, why is it so difficult for the medical profession to adopt the ideas, the techniques that I use? It's because we're trying to change people's ideas and beliefs that have been built up over years of education. Trying to undo that is very, very difficult.
Well, what happened when you went back to your Lao Tzu vessel? When you brought him into the trance. I mean, you had to have said, "Hey, I know who you are." What happened?
Yeah. It's a funny story, actually. When I discovered who he was, I called up my friend, the young man, and invited him round for dinner. And I said, "Do you know who Lao Tzu is?" And he said, "Isn't he that Chinese gentleman that you speak to when I'm in trance?" I said, yes, he is. But who is he? What's his identity? And he said, well, I don't know. I have no idea. So I showed him the book, and he was as astonished as I was. And so, you actually having conversations with this ancient sage while I'm in trance? I said, yes. I said, now that I know who he is, I need to speak to him again. So do you mind going back into trance so I can do that? And he didn't mind. He sat down and went into trance, and then Lao Tzu took possession of him, and his head came up and his eyes opened and he looked at me, and he had this wonderful knowing smile on his face. And I said, why didn't you tell me who you are? And he said, with this mischievous glint in his eye, he said, because isn't it so much more fun to find things out for yourself?
It's really his philosophy, the way, it's the parable, the way that they try to teach you by thinking on your own,
Well, now that was a very, very important message for me. I didn't realize the significance of it at the time. I just thought it was curious and amusing. But since then, my whole journey of discovery has been along those. I'm trying to find the words to explain it. An idea is put into my head, and I need to unravel the meaning of it. I need to find a solution for it. So I will continue my journey of exploration. So I have to find out for myself. And this brings me right up to the present day, when we're working with clients who are possessed or are influenced by some kind of spirit. And when I'm investigating to find out what's going on, I have to use this method of exploration, of challenging my own knowledge and gaining new knowledge. And the spirit guides that work with us will stand back and just let us, when I say us, I mean myself and my colleagues, we have to explore and find out for ourselves. And it's only when you get into severe difficulties that you can turn around and say, it's like praying to God, although, it's not a God, it's a spirit guide. I need help with this, can you help me? Then they will step in and help, but not until you ask them.
Right, that you need to learn on your own. You got to fall on your face to kind of learn the lessons of life, I guess. So they can't step in like you got your child. If you mommy them to death, I should say, or daddy them to death, because I'm more of a worry ward than my wife. I have to remember that I got to let my children learn some things on their own. I guess that's the best way to look at it.
It's fundamental.
Yeah.
This is the only way. This is what I've learned from my experience. The only way to learn something of value is to experience it yourself. Because if you're trying to learn from someone else's experience, you're not going to get the same value from it.
Now, what you say you have to go through this process. I mean, I'm sure you're trying to rule out things when you're discovering if somebody's got a spirit influence or possession. I'm sure you're trying to how do you rule out things like multiple personalities or any kind of psychological condition that's not of the spirit realm?
Well, there's a simple answer to that. We use a protocol. I'm not mediumistic. I work with a medium. Okay, I'm the scientist. I'm the rational thinker. So I work with mediums who are able to see and hear spirit. So I will connect with the person, the patient, the subject, and I'll say to the medium, right, we need to find out what's going on here. and I go through a checklist. It's a protocol, and we look at, we investigate different levels of different frequencies of energy vibration to find out what exists on that vibration, so we can check the frequency for interdimensional and intergalactic life forms, aliens.
Ooh, that's something I want to get into tonight too. About is, it's not just spirits; it could be an alien. Because I've always believed, that there's aliens could have such tremendous technology that makes it look like magic, is the quote. But that they might not even have to travel in spaceships to get here. They might just quantum leap us, jump into our body, and use us as a vessel. Like what was that movie with Kevin Spacey, K-Pax or whatever,
Well, they do this all the time, but I was about to answer your earlier question about multiple personalities. So we go through this protocol where we check the different energy vibrations. It's like tuning a radio or television channel to pick up different transmissions. So we go through this protocol, and the multiple personality is just one of the levels. So if we want to distinguish the difference, what's affecting this person, we will check all these different possibilities, and the multiple personality is just one of the levels we check.
Well, I'm sorry, I couldn't help but divert when you mentioned aliens, because that's such an interesting concept to think about. That they could walk into somebody, basically, the walk-in experience, and use somebody as a vessel to do whatever aliens need to do while they're here on Earth. I don't know, but you've run across that. I couldn't help but you say that. I'm like a kid in a candy store. I got to go for it. Have you've experienced that then, doing this research? Somebody who has an alien influence.
Well, yes, you need to understand, Jason, that this is daily work for me. I'm doing this every day.
Yeah,
and we're picking up these different entity species on a day-to-day basis. Let me give you an example. A very, very interesting case that was brought to my attention recently of a young woman contacted me on behalf of her 71-year-old mother. And this was a case on mainland Europe. This woman had been diagnosed with psychosis when she was just 42 years old. Okay, she had a nervous breakdown, an emotional breakdown. Something happened in the family. She couldn't deal with it. She was taken into the hospital. She was diagnosed with psychosis and put on antipsychotic medication. And that was 30 years ago. Okay, now as time has passed, the condition of this woman has deteriorated to such an extent that her daughter and her son, getting no respite, no help from psychiatric community, asked us if we could help. So we investigated this woman, and we found a load of stuff that was attached to her, interfering with her from an alien source, several alien sources actually. Wow. So we cleared it all away. We cleaned her up, so to speak. We tidied up her spiritual etheric body, and the transformation was miraculous. Wow. And the woman, the daughter, came back to us and said, "I can't believe the changes in my mother. You've given me my mother back, as she was 30 years ago. She's cleaned the place. She's actually become an alcoholic. She'd stopped drinking. She'd cleaned the place up. She washed her hair, and she cooked dinner for them and baked a cake. So the transformation was virtually complete, right? And this is efficacy of the method that we use. Now, she's still vulnerable. Okay, so she's still open to possible intrusion. Yeah. So I received an email from the daughter a couple of days ago saying my mother is now talking about other dimensions and other alien races. So I need to take her back to the psychiatrist. And I wrote back to her and said, no, don't take her to a psychiatrist because she's not mentally ill. This is not a sickness. This is reality. She is sensitive to other dimensions. She was reported being abducted and being experimented on.
That's what I wondered.
And this woman, over a period of 30 years, has experienced all these things. Okay, now, and this is a very, very important case for me because it illustrates what can happen to a person if psychiatric community are completely unaware of the possibilities. Right, this woman has suffered for more than 30 years because psychiatrists didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, my answer to that lady, if she had emailed me about her mom, would have been like, did psychiatry help you before? Because we did help her. It's obviously you can't cure a person in one try. You're gonna have to help a little bit, but she saw results from what you did, and they never in 30 years weren't seeing results from psychiatry.
Well, precisely, yeah. These methods, they work instantaneously because if something is interfering with you and you remove it, you're going to notice a difference immediately.
Well, so in your mind, do you think she's been abducted, but at the same time they're able to, like, besides physically taking her, check in on her and influence her or possess her remotely? Is that how that's working?
Yeah, it's very difficult to explain briefly, but I mean, she represents the sort of case that needs to be accurately documented. And this is where the research criteria come into play. Every single case that I work on is recorded, okay? All the conversations, all the emails, all the communications are documented. And if there's a verbal conversation, that's recorded and transcribed. So I'm actually putting a book together at the moment that only constitutes 3 case studies where these techniques are being used. And of course, the 3 case studies need to be analysed and explained, and the concepts surrounding these things need to be studied. And it's an awful lot of work is involved in just looking at one case, at the different characteristics, the phenomenology, the etiology of a single case. You mentioned earlier when we were talking earlier about Michael Cuneo.
Yeah, the author of American Exorcism. I've read that book, and it's a really good book.
He did the same thing. He analysed several cases and went into great detail. And another writer that went into great detail about spirit possession was Malachi Martin, whose name you may be familiar with. And he wrote about 5 cases, and it's an excellent book. He went into great detail. So when I'm explaining to you this case of the woman in Europe, the 71-year-old, is extremely complex. But for me, the important message is that when a person is presented as having a nervous breakdown or having a psychological collapse, you can't just administer an antipsychotic drug and hope the problem is going to go away.
Right.
It just does not. It does not work.
Yeah, I so agree with it. It's like, oh, well, give them a pill, and that's going to solve the problem. When they don't even understand at all what's going on with the person half the time. It is this case you just mentioned makes me you think about how many people are suffering right now, needlessly, because the psychiatric community won't recognize the actual problem.
Yeah, it's. I think it's criminal actually that it's ignored by mainstream medicine, and I'm still trying to find an institution, a psychiatric hospital that's going to take this seriously and actually investigate it to test to see how well it works. Now, I'm sitting here looking at my filing cabinet. It's got more than more than 200 cases waiting to be studied by some kind of scientific institution. Say, okay, well, let's have a look at these.
And yeah, you documented it all. I mean, if they're scientists, then if they don't, they believe your premises is false, then prove it, test it, do it yourselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
But they always scared of doing that, right? I mean, they never want to do that.
Let's at least have a look at it.
Right. I mean, it's worth exploration. What is consciousness? What are we? What animates us? That's what I found hypnosis so interesting, and because you're delving into the unknown territory of the mind. To me, the most unexplored place on earth is our own mind.
Well, I would use slightly different language to the language you just used, Jason. When you talk about exploring the hidden dimensions of the mind, I would use another term. I'd say we're exploring hidden dimensions of a multi-universe.
Well, yeah, definitely.
The altered state of consciousness can take you anywhere. To me, the mind and the spirit consciousness is all the same, just different words for the same concept. But when you dissociate your focused attention away from the here and now, you can go anywhere.
Oh yeah, remote viewing. I mean, astral projection. All these things within our, the spiritual community believe and accept these concepts. Of course, psychiatry won't right now. But I do kind of want to circle back a little bit to the alien thing. One more thing on it too, because one of the things I've always wondered. Because we've had a couple of abductees on here, and that the way that sometimes people are taken, it's like it's hard for them to prove they were taken, and sometimes they're right next to a loved one who's like, no, you were laying in bed with me, you were never taken. And, you hear that sometimes. Do you wonder sometimes people are abducted, not their bodies, but they're abducting their soul or their etheric body or something? That's how they're taken. The person's never physically left their location.
Yes, it's the etheric body that's abducted. And the consciousness that goes with it. The physical body remains, location. We're really talking about bilocation, aren't we? Being in two places at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. I mean, because your mind and consciousness is on some spaceship somewhere. Somehow they have you. But your body's still there. Now, I still do saying that. I've had like Terry Lovelace on the show. I mean, he has physical marks and implants. I mean, I think they've done more than take his etheric body. They've taken him and done some pretty horrendous things. But sometimes you wonder if they're like, oh, we only need their etheric body. We're just going to take that tonight.
Well, again, the knowledge that I have about these things only comes from the clients that I work with, and I've only had a couple of patients who've reported alien abductions, so my knowledge is quite sparse on, and I don't read up on these things. I'll only discover what is presented to me by the clients that come to me for help. So I'm not an expert on alien abduction, not by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, yeah, I get that. I understand that. Just sorry, the curiosity of when you brought up the alien thing. I can't help but dwell down that thing because it's something I think about. I've had to deal with some of my own memories recently that made me wonder about my own experiences. So I couldn't help but ask what your experiences are on that with the clients you've had. Now. Not all the I talked about at the beginning of the show that this isn't always about the demonic, and that's spirit possession can take many forms, but there is a dark side, right? I mean, besides the lady for 30 years her life she's an alcoholic and not bathing and all that. That's a dark side, but there are evil entities, right? That can take you over. That would be considered evil, I guess.
Yes, there are. And again, it's a very, very interesting area to explore. Whenever I come across a patient who has what would be described by a religious exorcist as the demonic, I need to understand the nature and the origin of this being. So I will ask the guides that are in attendance to help us with this. I'll say, is it going to be helpful to engage this one in dialogue? Sometimes it is, and very often it isn't. But we had one only this week that originated from ancient times. It was depicted in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. The one with the bird's head that was revered as a god. I can't remember what name.
Yeah, I'm not an Egyptologist, but I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was one of these, and I engaged this one in dialogue and said, "Be interested to know more about you." And the medium was conveying the message to me from this being that I said, "Is this one of those that's depicted as a god in ancient Egypt?" And the message came back, said, "Yes, well, we are godlike." And they still exist, and they still interfere and infect and possess people. So they're not restricted to ancient Egypt. They're in the here and now. Of course, when I talk about the here and now, time and space don't exist. So what is ancient is still now. It's a difficult concept to get your head around.
Right. Time travel is, in a way, or you talk about time like them or existing in two places at once. There are some difficult concepts. So you're communicating with this scene, and it says it was godlike. But in a sense, though, this is a negative entity for this woman or person. I didn't know if you said a woman or not.
Yes. It was a negative energy, and what often happens with this type of spirit entity is that they use the etheric body of the human being as an incubator for their offspring.
Oh, wow.
So when you look inside the etheric body, you find a nest of eggs in there. And these creatures are essentially, very many of them are bird-like, others are reptilians.
So they're like interdimensional beings, they're from another dimension, but they can see us, they can interact with us, use us as an incubator. That's a fascinating point, because you always wonder what their motivation is, for even interfering with us.
It's very common. We get these a lot, and this is why I document every single case, because
that gives me the creeps though too.
Yeah, it's very, very creepy.
Wow.
And when we talk about interdimensional creatures, there are these, that lay their eggs in the etheric body of the human being, but there are also non-intelligent parasitic entities like spirit bugs, bacteria that infect people.
Yeah, you would think. Psychology would look at the ideas of quantum physics and multiple dimensions, at least give it a shot, because scientists believe there's something else out there, and you wonder how that affects us. And the whole idea of one of the things we always say I'm a paranormal investigator, Terry. We have to consider when we go on investigations, we call it ghost contamination. Like, do we bring our own personal spirits or ghosts and contaminate a scene when we're trying to get evidence? We could call it, sometimes people have side effects after investigation. We call it ghost sickness, But you wonder, like, what kind of parasitic entities, or you said non-intelligent, like animal life forms in another dimension that are like attaching to us. The concepts are amazing. We're going to go to a commercial break, Terry. So we'll hold it there, and people watching on Facebook, we used to play music out the late night in the Midlands. We don't, so everybody hears the music now. But we're going to go to commercial. When we come back, we're going to talk more about this concept of parasitic entities on the other side. The idea is, we're going to go a little bit into the dark side of this, but I want to get back to the light too, because there's so many different ways we could be being affected by the spirit realm or other dimensions or alien influences, and how they might be affecting so many people. And the saddest part of this all to me is that there are people out there suffering, and psychiatry wants to give them some kind of new drug on the pharmaceutical companies, and I'm not a fan of, want to cure it with a pill, which does nothing but give people horrible side effects half the time. And then lives are ruined, and sometimes violently. Some of these people act out violently. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about how that affects, maybe even something like an active shooter. You know, there's evil, there's good, there's things influencing us that we're not recognizing. And that can be a scary concept. But we'll be back after this commercial break. And like I said, the phone lines are open. 219-230-4444. Skype ID OOJBland00. Call in, and we will call on you. Just listen for me to call out your name, and we'll bring you on the phone. All right, guys, be back in just a few minutes.
Come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Terry Palmer. He's the author of The Science of Spirit Possession. So we're talking about the concepts of, you know, being able to be taken over by another spirit or them influence you. You know, we talked about addictions. I mean, before the commercial break, we just took off with Terry talking about parasitic, non-intelligent entities affecting you. That to me is a really scary concept. You know, there's other dimensions. If you know the science, quantum physics, everything's telling us there's a possibility of other dimensions, and how do they influence us? What other creatures are on the other side, on that other dimension that can see us and influence? You know, I've talked about my shadow person experience and how that affected me and almost pushed me to my brink when I was 18, 17 years old. You know, that's what I think about tonight. You know, I felt I was in danger of possession during my instance. That's why this subject has always interested me and scares me. But there's also positive things tonight. We'll talk about, you know, you think about possession. Look at Edgar Cayce, another fascinating case from the 1930s and 40s. You know, the sleeping prophet. You know, something possessed him in that hypnotic state, and he gave such crazy, relevant information and cures and all kinds of stuff. So it can have a dark side and it can have a good side, obviously. So we're going to get into that. Now, you can call into the show. There's a couple ways you can do that. There's two ways. You can call in by phone at 219-230-4444, or you can call in by Skype ID OOJBLANDOO. That's Skype ID OOJBLand00. Just you call in, just wait, because we'll get to a point in the conversation where I'll call upon you. Just hang in there. You'll hear us. We won't hear you, and I'll call on you, and you can join and ask a question of our guest. Speaking of that, let's get back to our guest. You still there with us, Terry?
I'm still here, Jason.
But you were mentioning before we went to break about the parasitic, non-intelligent entities affecting people. So these are kind of like animal-like creatures in another dimension that are affecting people or influencing people or whatever, doing something, laying eggs in their etheric field. I don't know. That's such a creepy concept.
Yeah, as I said, when I'm working on these cases, I'm working with a medium that can see into other dimensions at different frequencies. So in that sense, I'm completely blind and deaf, okay, like most people. So I will say to the medium, okay, change the frequency, have a look at these different dimensions, and within the etheric body of the person, of the subject, and tell me what you find. And very often these non-intelligent parasitic entities, he will see them, he would describe them, for example, like a wasp's nest. Or I had another medium just recently, when I asked her to investigate this dimension, she said, they look like sperm or tadpole.
I have to tell you something, Terry. When you said this parasitic thing and things in the etheric realm around somebody, do they see this in people's auras? And I'm going to tell you why I'm asking that. But do they see it in people's auras when they're like looking at them?
Some can, yes.
Yeah.
Of course, mediums have different levels of ability, different skill sets, don't they?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
not all mediums are the same.
Yeah,
and
they all sense different ways. Some are audio, they hear,
Yeah, yeah,
clairinstant, and some see. And well, the reason I asked, Terry, is since my early 20s, I had kind of like a spiritual kind of little bit of awakening. And I don't, I tell people I'm not a psychic or a medium, but I have a lot of psychic medium-like stuff that happens to me. Since my early 20s, I started seeing these blue sparks of light around people. And I'd see them fly into people's heads. Sometimes they take shapes. I'll see shapes, and I'll see auras. And I don't understand what any of it means. But when you talk about parasitic entities and stuff in their etheric field, my mind goes right to what I've seen. And I don't know what it is. I don't know how to explain it. And I don't know if it means anything. But I've see this. I see this around people. I know Jason's weird, but I see it with my own eyes sometimes.
Well, I often encounter people who see and experience strange things that they can't explain. And my response to their observation is to say to them, well, haven't you asked what it is?
Who am I supposed to ask?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah.
What I've learned is that when you ask, you get an answer from somewhere, from someone. Going back to our earlier conversation, when I needed answers to fundamental questions, I asked these questions, and the entity, if I can use that word, or the spirit that gave me the answers was Lao Tzu, and he introduced himself. So in a roundabout sort of way, what I'm saying is that when you ask a question like that, some kind of spirit guide comes through. Now, before we had knowledge of the identities of guides, when the answer came from a source that was unknown to us, we called it God.
Right. Or gods.
Or gods, yeah. So the answer comes from somewhere. Now, when I get an answer come through, instead of just accepting my notion of the origin of that answer, instead of accepting the notion that it's God talking to me, I will ask. I'll say, who are you? What's your name? So I enter into conversation with a multitude of different types of spirit, and I need to identify their origin, who they are, what their personality is. And of course, you're meeting in that way, you're meeting good guides, and you're meeting the demonic. But you have to ask.
And they have to tell you?
Yes. They can lie.
That's what I was going to say. Can they lie? Be like, I'm Elvis,
And part of the art and the skill of being a spirit release practitioner is knowing when they're lying and knowing how to challenge them. And there are techniques that we use.
Now, how much, the other idea, concept that has to come up, especially with hypnotherapy, is past lives, too. How much does this play a role in this whole spirit possession?
It plays quite a significant part. And when I'm conducting an investigation to find out what's causing a problem for a person, I will ask the question of the guides, because the guides have all the answers. Is this a past life connection? Is this past life energy that's come through? And very often it is, because we've all had several past lives, and we are the person that we are today as a result of our past life experiences, and we carry through into this life the energy, the energetic vibration of past life experiences.
I've heard stories, read stories about people who are haunted even by spirits or possessed or influenced by it because of they're from their past life. It had nothing to do with what they were doing in their present life. The spirit being around them is from their past life.
Yes, it's very, very common. In
Yeah.
fact, a good friend of mine in the United States, he lives in Las Vegas now, since he's retired. He's a retired surgeon, Dr. Charles Tremont. Has spent his retired years working. Now, he's an obstetrician, retired obstetrician, and he was working with with patients, with birthing mothers, using hypnosis for pain-free birthing.
Oh wow.
And he discovered by accident, it was spontaneous, that when he was working with some of these women, they would go into a past life. And this intrigued him, so he went out of his way to study this. He went to the University of Nevada and he studied with Raymond Moody, whose name you may be familiar with. And he's written 2 books since, called From Birth to Rebirth.
Oh wow.
Was his first one, and the second one is entitled What Medicine... what's the title of that? What Medicine Needs to Know.
What was his name again?
Charles Tremont.
Charles
Dr.
Tremont. I'm gonna have to look that up. That sounds so fascinating.
So he specialised in past life memories. Now, there's the institution. There are several organisations that have been set up to train hypnotherapists in how to go about past life regression. I find that unnecessary, to be perfectly frank with you, because if you're working with someone face to face and you ask the question, it goes back again, and I will reinforce this. If you need to know something, you have to ask, okay? And when I was working with patients face to face, I would say to them, I don't know the answer to this question, and neither do you consciously, but there's a part of you that does. So we're going to access that part, and we're going to go to that time and place where this problem originated. And you just count to 3 and click your fingers, and they're there. And it's spontaneous. If the answer to the question resides in a past life, that's where they will go. And it's a very, very simple technique for doing that. Now,
I would like to explore past lives, though. I get what you're saying. Like, you only need to go there if you need to go there. But I would be interested. I'd be one of those people like, take me back. I want to know. I want to know. That's how I would be. Maybe I don't want to know, but
it's an interesting thing to explore if you have that curiosity. But from the position that I'm in at the moment, when I'm working on a day-to-day basis to help people be relieved of their distress, if the solution lies in uncovering past life trauma, then that's where we go. Yeah.
It makes me think my mom, she might be watching. I don't know if she's still watching. I remember, if I get this wrong, Mom, I'm sorry, but I remember her telling me a story. Her first pregnancy was a miscarriage, but it was a late-term miscarriage, and I think it was her miscarriage that this happened. I don't think it was when she was birthing me, but during the miscarriage, I think she was under or drugs, but she was conscious. She doesn't remember any of this, but my grandmother had told her she was speaking in like a different language. I think I don't think it was when she was giving birth to me. Maybe it was, but I don't think so. I think it was during her miscarriage. She lost the baby when she was in the hospital. She was speaking in a different language, and it makes you wonder, like a mother being hypnotized, going through this process of giving birth, reaches back into those parts of her that are from past lives, and that stuff comes about. Because I've heard of other women going through a birthing and doing stuff like that, speaking in a foreign language.
Well, the possibilities are endless, you see. Where does this foreign language come from? Is the person going into a previous life where they lived in another country? Is this another part of their consciousness that's split off, that's trying to reconnect? Or is this a possessing spirit? The possibilities are endless. And it takes me back to a comment that I made just a few moments ago. If you want an answer to this question, you have to ask. And when you ask, you do get an answer.
One of the concepts I've been fascinated by consciousness. People talk about the concepts of God. Well, I think about the concepts of consciousness, that everything comes from that. And one of the ideas that I always put out there was, the case of Sybil. If it's true, I've read stuff that said, that her case was more made up or whatever. I don't know. But the idea of Sybil, if I remember right, was she was tortured by her mother and locked in a cabinet a lot in the dark, and that's sensory deprivation. And one of the things I've always pointed out is about the consciousness is, and other people have had this, POWs, that when they're isolated, they're thrown in a box. The mind breaks off. It becomes other people. It can't be alone. The consciousness, when it's finally all senses are cut off, it likes to break off and cut off and become its own little world. And that's where these personalities come from. And I've always said that consciousness has this way of it doesn't want to be alone. Are some of these things you deal with, not to say that they're multiple personalities, but they're people's own shadows. So you kind of touch upon this in at least the part of the book I read, where is it really a spirit? And I don't know if you're really talking about multiple personalities, but like a topa, something that is created out of your own subconscious or your own issues, kind of.
Well, again, it's not an easy question to answer in a short space of time. It's very, very complex, and the possibilities are endless.
Right.
You can have dissociated subpersonalities that are created spontaneously through trauma, being tortured or being locked up, and this happens to an awful lot of people, particularly children who are abused and in some way. Excuse me. And these are very, very common. But you also have the concept of the self-created thought form.
Right.
And very often a thought form, again, they're created spontaneously. They are like a superhero or a super protector. It's something that the vulnerable child needs in order to protect them.
The imaginary friend,
Well, and the imaginary friend is something quite different. But they're all related in some way. They're all self-created. But
right.
To add confusion to the whole picture, when a person is vulnerable in this way, and they create their spontaneous dissociated subpersonalities, the personality can become even more fragmented. It can become shattered. Like if you drop a glass and it shatters into a million pieces, and then you get lost soul fragments that disappear into the ether, so to speak. And then added to that, this is the vulnerability, this is the fragmentation of the personality. Added to that, you have these interdimensional life forms that will take advantage of that and come in to pick up the pieces because they're valuable. Human energy is a commodity that's valuable and is traded on interdimensional black markets. There's another dimension to think about.
Well, I don't know if you heard me during one of the, I think it was back, I don't remember what I said, I think from this last commercial break I was talking about, I had a shadow person experience that tormented me for 4 months. It would be in my dreams, it'd be in my physical waking, I'd see it, and it was trying to drive me to the brink, and it fed off my fear and my I guess sadness or depression, but it really fed off my fear. And I've always believed that there's some kind of, because I never called this thing demonic, and I still don't, but I felt it was some kind of interdimensional entity that enjoyed death, suffering, and fear.
Yes, you explain it quite simply, really. But to take it a stage further, every human emotion has an energetic vibration. Fear has a particular energy signature, and there are interdimensional creatures that feed on that energy, and in order for them to continue sapping energy from you, they have to keep you in a position of fear.
Right.
But fear is only one human emotion. You also have anger, you have depression, you have a range of negative emotions on subtle different frequencies, and they attract entities that feed on that particular energetic vibration.
Well, you know what? Anger is addictive. I can see how a spirit could feed on anger. It's like when you're angry, it's just you like want to feed it more and more and more. You're just going to get more angry about this. You're going to get more angry about that. And you wonder if there's something else behind that going, yeah, get angry. That tastes good.
Well, what you've just described is an explanation as to why there are still so many wars going on.
Well, true. Sadly, true. But yeah, anger in itself and violence is addicting. It's just like it just keeps feeding upon itself. I have to stop. I would try to recognize that when I am angry, that if I just keep feeding it, I keep finding more reasons to be mad. I will, and it'll just be this ball of anger that just keeps getting bigger and bigger until I explode. So yeah, I could definitely I can see how some kind of entity could feed upon that, and that's a scary concept because some people go out and do some pretty bad things out of anger, some horror, violence and murder. Do you think people can be pushed to that point from these entities?
Prisons are full of people who are affected in
Yeah.
this way, as our mental hospitals are. We cannot ignore the possibility, or rather the very, very high probability that people are affected by these entities that feed off these negative emotions.
Or suffering. One of the things I've brought up on this show before about some of the I hate to go down this topic because it's a very touchy topic, but active shooters, the ones who did not get the chance to kill themselves, seem to have a lot of lack of memory of the instant that they did, and it makes you wonder if something else was possessing them.
I don't wonder about it at all. In fact, I wrote a paper on this back in 2008.
Really?
And I posed the question, are these people evil? Are they psychologically disturbed, mentally ill, or are they possessed?
Thank you for asking that question, because I've been asking that same question for years.
And I know the answer to it because I've actually encountered.
Really?
I was in North America about 2 or 3 years ago. I was invited to Michigan to do some work with a group of people learning the techniques I use. And it was just shortly after the incident of the Kalamazoo killer. He was a taxi driver
Yeah,
who just killed 6 people.
I remember.
And we sat down and using the gifts of a local medium, we accessed this man as he was sitting in his jail cell. And I had a conversation with the entity that encouraged him to kill those 6 people.
Whoa.
And I recorded it. It's on YouTube, and I've used it for conference presentations.
Oh, I am going to watch that right after this show, because it's a question I've had for a long time.
Well, if you access my YouTube channel, it's called the Kalamazoo Killer.
Oh, I'm going to so watch that. We do have I'm going to take a phone call here if you're all right with that. We have somebody that's been hanging on the line. If you're all right taking a phone call at this moment.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, we got Zach on the line. He's always got really great questions. How you doing tonight, Zach?
I'm doing pretty good, brother. How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for calling in. This is a great show tonight. Terry, you're an awesome guest tonight. This is such an interesting topic. And Zach, you've been hanging in on there on hold for a little bit, so thank you, because I know you're gonna ask a question I probably haven't asked yet, but you always ask a really good one.
Yeah, I just have one question. Terry, I love hearing everything that you're saying. It's an honor to meet you. My one question to you is, what are the criteria that you look for when confirming the identity of a spirit that is possessing someone?
I ask them their name. I need to determine the type of spirit that it is. Is it the type of spirit that a religious person would call demonic? Is it an interdimensional life form? Is it from this galaxy? Is it from this Earth? So I need to determine its origin and its species first of all. If it's an earthbound human, I ask its name, what it died, what he or she died of, how old they were when they passed over, and why they are attached to this particular person. Okay, and actually just a second question now just popped up in my head, if it's okay with me asking as well.
Yeah, go.
Because I'm sure many of the cases that you've come across, they all sound like it was that this possession is non-consensual without saying it. have you ever had any cases to where someone was possessed where they maybe unintentionally gave consent to an entity possessing them without even realizing it until later?
Yes, very often. Yeah. Often when we have these dialogues with possessing entities, they will say, but he or she agreed to it. We were invited. And then on further investigation, we find that the invitation was out of naivety, without full disclosure of the facts. So it's a form of deception.
What's like the typical, what is the typical method that a spirit would use to manipulate someone to give consent without recognizing it until later?
By offering them something that's appealing, that's attractive. It could be anything that the person wants, really, but the possessing entity would say, well, I can make this happen for you. I can make this person fall in love with you, or I can help you pass this exam. It could be anything.
Okay, cool. Well, that's really all the questions that I had, Terry. I do greatly appreciate you answering those for me. I love hearing everything that you're saying, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from you, man. And like Jason too, I definitely want to check out that video that you posted up as well.
Nice to hear from you, Zach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zach. You have a great night, bud.
Hey, you too, brother. You take it easy.
All right, man. Well, we talk about, another thing I think about the case, we talk about people acting violently because of possession. There's a classic, an old case, the video documented when they had, just the first VHS was the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine Warren. I'm sure you're very familiar with who they are. Had a case, oh God, I'm trying to think of the individual's name. Anyways, in this video, they show one of the exorcism, I guess you would call it, that they were doing on him, and you see his head crack open and bleed. You see his facial expression change. You see his eyes even change into like slits. Maybe it was just poor video. I don't know. I've never been able to decide. But that gentleman, after that, later on, ended up trying to kill his wife. I remember he ended up shooting her, but she survived, and then he ended up turning the gun on himself. That to me, of course, the Warrens looked at it as demonic. What is, if it is demonic? What is the point? Or for them to cause that kind of just destruction in somebody's life?
I don't really know the answer to that question. Most of the possessing entities that we encounter are just using the energy of the human being for their own selfish needs. But when a demonic entity is deliberately causing mayhem and destruction, to me, it's just a form of hatred.
That's my shadow person experience. I still don't like to call it demonic, but there is like this entertainment factor, I think, for it, but also like a hatred for everything that I was, and wanted to destroy that.
Yeah, it's the only explanation I can give. You have these possessing entities that are just doing it out of hatred, and I have no other explanation for it.
Well, Malachi Martin, he definitely being a Catholic priest, he looked at the demonic, and went to the source of the Bible, that said these are fallen angels that hate man. Did you, in any of your spirit release, do you find anything that kind of confirms some of the concepts of the Bible and the demonic, and like what thoughts like Malachi Martin had on what the demonic was? Well,
yeah, it's the sort of language that's most commonly used in such cases,
right?
But it's not the sort of language that I use. I like to remain detached from spiritual or religious language or mythology, and the way I deal with entities like this, I just say to the spirit guides that are helping us and working with us, just we'll leave this to you. And very often what they have to do is to go to a higher level in the spiritual hierarchy, to a higher level of power, in order to be able to deal with this particularly powerful negative entity. So it's beyond our capabilities to deal with this kind of thing. We have to leave it to the higher powers to deal with it.
Well, so I was wondering, too. I mean, you of course, Hollywood makes exorcisms like The Exorcist, and all that look like they're spinning their heads around and throwing people around the room. When you're doing this and you do encounter something you believe is considered demonic, does the person you're doing the therapy on, are they exhibiting that kind of behavior, or do you have them totally? Do you have to pin them down or anything like that, or do you have it under control, like that they can't do anything to move or hurt you or anything like that?
Well, I've never experienced a case like that. Of course, we're talking about Hollywood drama.
Right.
I love Hollywood films. When I went to see The Exorcist in 1973 with my wife, we had to leave the cinema because she couldn't watch it. But shortly after that, I was determined to see it myself, and I went to see it alone. And yeah, I mean they're an amazing entertainment. It's a thrill factor, isn't it? They stimulate our fear senses.
But at the same time, it is based off of some of the incidents and accounts of exorcisms and the way people act. They talk about them levitating or throwing people. I mean, we've heard countless stories of that. So when you're doing it, you're not getting that kind of response, though.
No, and the reason for that is because I'm working with people remotely at a distance. I mean, half of my cases are in North America.
Right.
And many of them are in UK, but we've got cases in Scandinavia, Central Europe, Australia, India, all over the world. So we don't actually get to see the patient.
But so you remotely, you're hypnotizing them. Is that part of the therapy? Is taking them under, right? Is using hypnotism? Sometimes, I mean, I know you remotely use the contact or spirit guides using the medium, but are you remotely hypnotizing them too?
Well, that's.
I know it's technical.
Okay, let me try and answer this question for you. Normal day-to-day work, we're just. I'm working with a medium, right? Now, picture this, okay? I'm in London, say, okay, and the client is in New York. The subject is in New York. Now, my medium lives in the West Country, down in the southwest of England. So we are three individuals completely separated geographically, okay? For me to understand what's affecting the subject in New York, I have to go through the mind of the medium, right? And I'll say to the medium, okay, connect with Joe Bloggs in New York and look at his etheric body and tell me what you see. So the medium is conveying to me what he perceives, and we will work in that way. And then the third member of the team comes in, who's the spirit guide that actually does the work, okay? Now, once we've cleared away all the spirit entities and cleaned up the etheric body so that the light is shining through it again, if there are any psychological problems that need to be dealt with, if the person needs therapy, if they have dissociated subpersonalities, and here I make the distinction between the spiritual and the psychological, okay?
Right.
We deal with the spiritual first, get rid of all the interfering entities, get rid of the earthbounds so that they're spiritually clean. Then we can start. It's a bit like if a person is injured physically, you have to clean the wound with disinfectant first before you can repair it, right? So the spiritual dimension is the disinfectant, if you like, and the interdimensional bacteria are all cleaned out with an antibiotic. Let's use that language, if you like. When that's all cleaned up, then the person needs ongoing therapy. Then we can start talking about using telepathic hypnosis, because then I'll be speaking directly with the subconscious of the patient and not the medium.
Well, you talk about people, having fragments of their consciousness and all that. That spirits are attracted to that. Or entities or interdimensional entities are attracted to that, like it's food. So I can see you, after you get rid of the spirits or entities out of the way, that you have to keep them from coming back by repairing that psychological damage, I guess.
Yes.
That's really fascinating. That how our own psychological problems or the abuses we might have had as children can attract these things to us.
Yes, it's the vulnerability. Once we've cleared out and cleaned up the etheric body, I'll say to the spirit guide who's in attendance, what was the vulnerability of this person that attracted these problems in the first place? And we get an answer. It could be drug or alcohol abuse. It could be childhood trauma. It could be past life. It could be occult practices where a person was a witch or a wizard in a past life and they still have this connection. It could be any number of things. So we identify the cause, and then we can give advice to the patient on how to protect themselves from it happening again.
So somebody in a past life could have made a deal with the devil, and it wasn't just that life it affect. It's going to affect all their future lives.
Well, that's right, yeah. And so if there's a contract or an agreement in place, it needs to be rescinded, torn up, invalidated. Yeah.
Well, you talked about having the medium kind of like remote view the person and working with their spirit guide and that. It makes me think, I mentioned earlier, I think on one of the breaks, Edgar Cayce. He was able to...
Yes.
It seemed like he was possessed. If you read all the accounts when he was under, he never remembered what he would say, and it always was a different personality, really, that came through. It seemed like it would talk about Edgar in the third person.
Well, yes. Well, this is Edgar Cayce is a good example of positive spirit possession.
Yeah.
Now, when I'm teaching and working with trainees, and we had a course just recently in the UK a couple of weeks ago, where I was teaching therapists how to do this work. I pair them up into teams where you have the facilitator, who's the therapist, who's not mediumistic, right? Like your psychologist or your hypnotherapist, okay, working in a team paired up with a medium, right? And then so the facilitator then says to the medium, have a look at this person, and we're working with real life cases. This is not hypothetical. This is not theory. This is real life case stuff. And I ask them to bring a case into the training session and say, does anyone have a case for us to work on? So the medium will then connect with the patient, right? And then we'll have a second medium that is there to channel the guides that are working with us. So positive possession.
Sounds like a big team effort to help somebody, and that's great. We do have another phone call I'm going to take here. Who do we have on the line?
Hey, Jason, it's Tyler.
Hey, Tyler. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, this is such a great guest to have on your show tonight. I'm taking a lot in, trying to recoup what I want to really say and ask and whatnot. Do you, Terence, do you believe in generational curse? But do you know anything about that or whatnot?
Yeah, we do get those. And curses can be rescinded. You can protect yourself from a curse. We've had families that have had generational curses. Right. We've had families in North America where their ethnic origin has been Africa or the Caribbean or somewhere else where voodoo is practiced, and the family is suffering from these curses. And the way we deal with that is to put a protection, a shield around the family members that is a reflective shield. so that it reflects the curse back to its sender, and that's what stops it.
Oh wow! I see my grandfathers a lot in my dreams, and like I feel like I can't prosper. I can't overcome all these challenges in my life. I constantly, I mean, I do good, and then I fall. When I fall really hard. And like right now, I'm in college. I'm doing really good. You know, I'm healthier. I'm not doing the things that my fathers were doing. You know, my age, like drinking heavily and drug use and all that other stuff. So like I've stopped that part of the generational curse, but I'm still can't rise above what my full potential in this world is supposed to be. And I'm at my wit's end.
Well, let me offer you a suggestion. What you may like to do, you may find it useful to follow the self-protection protocol that I have on my website and on my YouTube channel. In fact, it's the most popular, the most used recording that I have. Several thousand people have used it. It's a daily routine that you go through when you get up in the morning before you go to work or go to school. It's like getting dressed and brushing your teeth. You go through this routine. It just takes a few minutes where you put yourself in a protective bubble. You clean your spiritual energy field, like cleaning your body. You clean your spiritual body before you get dressed. And you put yourself in this protective bubble that's reflective, that bounces back anything bad that is sent towards you, and it keeps you safe. And as you go through your daily life, you maintain a high vibration, a high emotional vibration. You don't allow yourself to fall into fear or anger or despair. You keep your emotions bright and cheerful, and that keeps all the negative energy away from you.
Oh wow! Like today, I work at a pie shop, and I was gonna get we have brownies there, and they were kind of going bad, and I told the customer, I'm like, they're going bad. I'm not gonna sell that to you, and they loved my honesty, and then he came back up to me, and he's like, I'll take that brownie actually. I was like, you know what? I'll just give it to you for free. Just remember to always pass it forward. You know, that I was just trying to give good energy to him. And he looked at me, and he's like, I bought a homeless man a meal the other day. So, like, you know, I'm just trying to encourage my spirit to say, hey, I don't want no more negativeness. I want to move forward.
It's a good attitude to have. You keep anything negative at bay. And sometimes it can take a bit of practice to do that. The important thing, I think, is for you to maintain your own positive energy, really. It sounds a trite thing to say, and it can take practice. But if you feel yourself falling into arguments or disagreements, to find a way to negate that, to raise the positive energy in whatever it is you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's the thing is that's what's at the bottom of my chest is the anger and the rage of what I'm conflicting, and then I say and do things that I normally wouldn't say, and it all comes out wrong, and then boom, I'm back to square one again. So you're right. I need to change be more positive.
If he has
Thank you for that.
Go ahead, Terry. You there, Terry?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
I said, go ahead. I was going to say something, but I didn't know you were going to talk. I'm sorry.
No, I was just waiting for you.
Oh well, I was going to say if he has like if he did have like some kind of entity attached to him, or a generational entity, maybe not just even a curse, but something that's followed his grandfather and his father and him, that influencing him, keeping a positive attitude and changing the way he did things would be like cutting off their food source if they're feeding on that, right?
There could be a contract in place that needs to be nullified and rescinded. Without carrying out thorough investigation, I'm not in a position to say what's causing it, really.
But when somebody does do that, they kind of change their energy, or they do the process you're talking about. If there is something attached to them, it's kind of cutting off their energy source.
Yeah, the way I deal with it, and of course I've had my own personal experiences as well. If something is happening to me or influencing me that I find uncomfortable, I don't like, then I reject it. I refuse to entertain it. I just won't have it, and this enables me to stay physically, emotionally, and spiritually healthy.
Well, Tyler, you keep doing that, man. You keep being positive, and you keep fighting that darkness.
I feel like every time I'm trying to do good, it absolutely does not like it. Like it feels like it's trying to kill me. I know it is. It's trying to take my soul, and I'm not letting it do that. I mean, I was at my breaking point, and then my son called me, and it completely just rearranged everything I was thinking, and emotions came, and he even said, "Daddy, you need God in your life, and I'm going to pray for you." And I'm like, "Wow, I wasn't even all expecting that out of a 9-year-old little boy." But yeah, thank you for everything, Jason and Jamie and Rob and Jeff, for this show. Because without you guys, people like me, we probably won't make it through this world. We need this education.
Well,
hey,
thank
man,
you.
You're not the only one, man. I've been dealing with that kind of stuff the last few months myself, man. So you're not alone in that.
Well, thank you.
I love you guys.
We love you too, Tyler. Thank you for calling in, man.
Life.
All right, bud. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
All right, man. Thanks. But it makes you wonder, like somebody like Tyler, who feels like every time something starts to get good, something negative happens, like something's working against him. Do these entities try to manipulate things in your life to get a better control on you?
Yeah, they can only exploit your weaknesses.
Yeah.
If you allow yourself to fall into despair, then you become vulnerable. Or if you fall into some kind of habit that's self-destructive, it will be reinforced. But if for people who are totally and completely innocent, if you ask for help from your guides and say, "I really don't need this, can you help me?" Because we all have a guide, we all have spirit entities around us that are positive, and they will step in and help, but they need to be asked.
It makes you how it works in religion. With like Christianity, a lot of people say you have to get rid of the demons. You got to accept Jesus Christ as your savior, and all that stuff. It makes you wonder, by calling on on Jesus Christ, or calling on your spirit guides. You have to physically commit yourself, or say it, that you want that help from whatever positive source that is. You have to make that, I guess, invite them in.
Yes, you do, because one of the fundamental principles of the universe that we live in is that we have free will, and many people refer to this as God-given free will. But we all have free will, and we can choose the path we tread. And if you want to experience a good, wholesome, productive life, one of the lessons that we have to learn on our pathway is what it's like to not have that. And this is what I learned from the philosophy of Taoism, from Lao Tzu, is that everything in the universe is in balance, the good and the bad, the light and the dark, God and the devil, good and evil. They're in constant flux, constant balance. You can't have one without the other. So if you want to enjoy a productive life with happiness and love, you also need to be able to experience the downside, the dark side of that. And it's part of our learning process. So when you've had enough of the dark side, then you can throw your hands in the air and say, okay, I've learned from that. Thank you very much for the teaching. Now let's go to the light.
I know from my dark experience, I definitely learned a lot from it. Yeah, and but go ahead. Go ahead.
It's a good teacher.
It is, and it opened my eyes. It opened my eyes to that there's another reality out there that's influencing us. And it made me think of like a lot of the stuff we talked about tonight. Is how is it influencing other people around me? You know, I've had people in my life I've had to walk away from, Terry. Because, like I said, I see things and I feel it. And I've had people where I get sick to my stomach around them suddenly because I feel like something, their personality changed. I like see it in their eyes. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like I have to get away from them. And I've always wondered, are they influenced, possessed? Something there that I'm picking up on is a danger signal.
Yes, it's a good sign. We develop sensitivities to these things. It's a simple principle, really. Like attracts like. Beings of a similar vibration will join together. Birds of a feather flock together, and so on. So if you come into contact with a person whose energy frequency is vastly different from yours, you're not going to be attracted to them. You're going to be repelled away from them. So the answer, quite simply, is don't try to force a relationship if it's not going to work. It's because you're on a different vibration. It's a simple principle, really.
Yeah, and I've had that. Some people I just don't mix with, but there's some people I did, and then they change, and like something happens to them, and they go to dark places, and you can see and it's always around a haunting. I'll get to the point. It's usually because I feel like there is a spirit or something else influencing that person, or even taking somewhat of a possession of that person. I honestly, Terry, I had one person that I used to be a neighbor of mine, ran across into him and his new girlfriend in a parking lot, and they gave me the creeps, and he never gave me the creeps before. They gave me the creeps, and I'm like, okay, well, it's good seeing you, and I got my car and left, and it was like an hour later, he was back at my door with his new girlfriend, and they're like, hi, we thought we'd stop by, and they're like looking at me with these eyes that are like, let us in, and I didn't. And that was that sick feeling I had in the parking lot. And then when they really got sick, when they showed up at my house, and it always made me wonder, is like, were they both just, there was something that off put me about both of them, like something else. This wasn't the normal person I knew a couple years before. That something had changed, taking him over, and this girl too. I didn't know her before, but it's just my gut instinct told me that something was influencing both of them. Maybe it was drugs. But I don't know. But man, it was a creepy experience, and I've had a few others similar to that where I just felt like there was another presence involved.
And you're probably right. It's a very, very useful sensitivity to have.
Yeah, I learned the hard way. Well, you want to talk about learning the hard way? There's people I've had in my life I felt that around, and before I really understood these things, and I tried to push it away. I have no reason to feel this way about this person. They seem perfectly respectable. And then it turns out later on they are really bad and do really bad things to you, and I find out the hard way. So I've learned to trust those instincts quite a bit.
Are you familiar with the work?
Feeling, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you familiar with the work of M. Scott Peck?
No.
He was an American psychiatrist who wrote The People of the Lie, and he talks about such people in his book. It's a good read.
I'll have to check that out. That out. We do have a caller on line, but I'm Laura Lee, you're on the line right now. Just hang in there because we're going to be going to commercial break here in a few minutes. Just hang in there. We'll take you after the commercial break, so just hang on. But when we get back from the commercial break, Terry, I will take her phone call, but I definitely want to touch upon more of the idea of, one thing we haven't really gotten to is people who purposely take on possession. There's a video out there of a guy I played on the show who talks about the benefits of spiritual possession and being possessed and what it can do for you and give you powers of telepathy and all this stuff. And I thought it was kind of dark and sinister, him coaching to people that they should look to be possessed. We played this is probably a couple years ago, but it's what I keep thinking about this video. If I had it handy, I would have played it. But I keep thinking about this video when we talk about this stuff. So that's something I want to get to tonight. So let's not forget. I want to get back to people who purposely have themselves possessed. All right. Well, we're going to go to commercial rate, guys. Listening here on Late Night in the Midlands Network here. Yeah, no copyrighted music right now. We'll get that back soon, I hope. Maybe about a Halloween show. I don't know. But don't freak out, guys. We will be back with our guest, Terry Palmer, to talk about Science of Spirit Possession. That is his book. These concepts, some of them are frightening to me, and some of them are just enlightening, and makes my imagination go wild with the concept of the hidden reality around us, what we're not seeing. Some of the things, like I admitted tonight, I do see these things with my own eyes or feelings. That's why I'm open to this. This is why I believe this is a real thing happening in our lives, and what makes me wonder is how is it affecting all of us? And if you really think about, are there spirits around us, spirit guides, spirit attachments? Are they affecting you? That's what you listen to the show. I know you're all thinking about that. You're all thinking about, do I have a spirit attachment? How is it affecting me? Is it what makes me smoke or makes me drink? Is that there? It's what always first Malachi Martin show I ever heard about demons and stuff. That's what it made me think about. I was like, how am I being affected? All right, guys, when we come back with our guest, Terry Palmer, in just a few minutes. Tonight on Paranormal Soup, we've been talking with our guest, Terry Palmer, author of Science of Spirit Possession. It's been, so far, I mean, I could keep talking about this all night. This subject so interests me. It's not just about the dark side, like I said, about spirit possession and demons and all that. It's about consciousness itself and the spiritual realm around us and how it's affecting us. Since I was a child, I've been enthralled with this idea that there's this world we can't see. And I feel like I've been lucky enough to get glimpses of it. Like I told you, I see little blue lights that fly in and out of people and around the world, and I'll see shapes in the world. Yeah, maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. But I've seen glimpses into this other world that surrounds us. And my imagination goes wild with how does this affect our everyday lives? Is it affecting you? Or do you believe spirits could be attached to you? You can call in. We do have the phone line full at the moment. We got somebody on. Hang in there. But you can call in at 219-230-4444 or Skype ID 00JBland00. Call in. Tell us, do you think something's affecting you? Maybe in a good way. We want to get into the positive way. Maybe some people want to purposely be spiritually possessed. That's what we're going to talk about here in a little bit, but let's get back to our guest. Now, we've had somebody online. You still there with us, Terry?
Yes, I'm still here, Jason.
Okay, we had Laura Lee waiting on the phone line. Thanks for hanging in there. How you doing tonight, Laura Lee?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Pretty good. Laura Lee is a fellow host on LLNM Radio Network. Please donate, subscribe, do what you can to help keep this great network alive for radio show hosts like me and Laura Lee here, who's doing a show Monday through Friday.
I am the Angel Rock. thanks for the plug.
Of course, got to plug it on Studio B. We have Studio A and Studio B, people. Plenty of reasons to subscribe to the Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. Thanks for calling in, Laura Lee. I'm sure you have some really good insights or questions for our guest tonight.
Well, first of all, Terry, I got to thank you for being here. I'm loving what you're speaking about. I'm absolutely fascinated by the topic of the hypnotherapy that you're using, that you've described. And I also love that you mentioned that you're a scientist, because as Jason knows and many of our callers, we have been through quite our paranormal experience ourselves, yet exactly what you talked about, like attracts like, vibrational energy, focusing, what you talked about with the bubble. I actually teach that myself now too. I use the most powerful emotion I believe there is love. And I get people, because some people really have a hard time, especially if they've been through it for a long time. We went through 10 years almost of this, to find those positive feelings, to not feel so depressed, or, especially when they feel they've been hit from every area, that I get them to focus on somebody in their life that they love. And by focusing on that energy, imagining it surrounding themselves. Do you ever use emotions yourself when you're getting people to practice this type of bubble, the protective bubble?
Yes, I do. And in the work that I do, in order to help a person, well, if I've reached that stage where I'm working with them telepathically using hypnosis, and I'm imagining that the person is sitting in front of me in a therapeutic situation, I will use suggestions and ask them to open their heart chakra and allow the light to come in. If you've got a person who has never known love in their lives, a person who's been abandoned at birth, for example, and shifted from pillar to post, from family to family, and they couldn't settle, no matter how much love has been given to them, they found it difficult to accept because of the negative consequences of abandonment and rejection. So they don't know what it is. They don't know what love is, and they don't know what trust is. These are the most difficult cases to treat. So what I do with a case like that, I will ask them to open themselves, open the heart chakra, and allow divine love to come in. And that is a truly life-changing experience for them, because then they suddenly understand what love is.
No, I love that, because I teach about all those things, about the chakras, about self-love, about like attracts like, the whole bit. I resonated with everything. And I also teach, even if you may not believe that you have angels and you have spirit guides, guess what? They believe in you. So thank you. This is a fascinating show today, and I'm really, really enjoying it.
Well, thank
Good.
you,
I'm very pleased to hear that.
I won't tie up the phone lines. Thanks for taking my call, Jason. Wonderful show as usual.
Well, thank you, Laura Lee. And what time is your show?
Oh, my show is 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. And Jennifer Malik and I are usually on Seraphine Hurley's show. She co-hosts usually with me on my show, The Angel Rock, Mondays and Thursdays. And then we are part of the panel, and usually Katie Neely join Seraphine. We are on Infinite Inquisitions right out, or Inquisition, no S, right after from 12 and 2 a.m.
See, plenty of reasons to subscribe, people. We got 2 different studios, Studio A, Studio B. Donate, subscribe. We need you to keep this network going. Need you bad. Help us out. Go to lnmradionetwork.com, subscribe and donate. Thank you, Laura Lee. You have a great night.
You too. Thanks again.
All right,
Take
bye.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Laura Lee. Nice talking to you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
She was one of my first, well, not the first caller into my show, but one of my very first callers into my show 3 years ago. And incredible stuff that was happening to her in her home. But, she definitely described as demonic. These things can have, the spirit possession part is frightening, but the physical things that they can do, like move objects, or like for her case, it picked her husband up and threw him across the room. Are they using our energy to make these psychokinetic things happen?
I really don't know the answer to that question, Jason. I don't know how they do it, but all I know is that beings in the spiritual dimension are able to manipulate our physical world beyond our explanations and understanding.
It's one of the things in my shadow person experience, I know there was a lot of weird synchronicities too, that I just don't know what it means or how it lines up or how something could manipulate those kind of synchronicities to happen. It's undescribable is the way to put it. I just lost for words for the weirdness when I had my shadow person experience, which I honestly still don't call demonic. I really believe it's something like interdimensional, is how I've always described it.
Well, my suggestion to you is for you to ask the question of your own guides and say, connect with your own guide, your principal guide, and say, can you explain this to me, please? Because now I need to know. And you will get an answer.
I need to do something because this happened to me. I'm 39, and it happened to me when I was 18, and I still feel like I don't know anything more than I did when I was 18 after it happened, except that not to go. That was something I invited upon myself by provoking.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jason. Next time I'm in New York, I'll pop round and see you, and we'll see if we can find out.
Well, New York might be a faraway place from me where I'm at, but if you're ever near Chicago.
You're Chicago.
I'm very close to Chicago. I'm like 45, 50 minutes from Chicago.
I'll be coming up to Chicago anyway to see friends and colleagues there.
I'd love to meet you. I mean, I honestly, Terry, for the last, probably since I first heard you on another plug for an L&M show is Paraversal Universe with Kevin and Jennifer Malik is where I first heard you. And I'm like, okay, I think I contacted him right after the show, and I said, hey, I don't want to try to steal guests from you, but I would love to get his information. I'd love to have Terry on. It was a great show. Thank you, guys.
I have every intention of visiting them in Chicago.
I still haven't met him either. I need to meet him too.
I did intend to visit Chicago quite soon, but to visit a dear friend of mine who recently died there.
Oh, I'm sorry for your loss.
And he was a writer on the spiritual, and he was suddenly taken away from us. But he'll be contacting us again soon, I'm quite sure.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is he going to pop into one of your sessions? Like somebody. What incredible proof would that be? Somebody has no idea who your friend is or whatever. You're doing a session, and then he pops in. That person would have no idea about him.
It does happen.
That's incredible. Why can't the scientific community look at this? Why do they have to ignore it? They're so skeptic. Just test it yourself. What's the harm of that? See for yourself. See if your skepticism can handle it.
I have some good news on that front. I've been working or getting to know, building working relationships with researchers in the UK for many years. I'm a member of the Society for Psychical Research, and a senior professor at one of our UK universities. I've got to know him very, very well, and he has an interest in these phenomena. And his department, researching parapsychology, are interviewing mediums and taking a very, very serious interest. So there are moves in the right direction, but it needs to be done in association with universities and research institutions.
One of our friends, friend and fan of the show and a guest is Katrina Cooper. She's a medium. And who was the doctor? She's just recently went undergone a bunch of tests to prove her abilities with a doctor in Chicago, I believe it was too. Who was that, Jamie? Do you remember the name? I know Katrina's told me a billion times, and I keep forgetting now.
I can't remember the name.
I totally slip in my mind right now. But there are people that. Scientists and researchers out there that are giving it an honest shot, I think more and more. There's definitely more of an acceptance to it.
Yes, there are. There is a definite shift. I've noticed in recent years there's more of a positive outlook on these phenomena from serious researchers. It's a slow process, but it is happening.
Well, I know one of the parts in your book you talk about Myers and quantum physics. And
Yes.
quantum physics, I think, has done a lot to help open some of these minds of science to the idea, because quantum physics throws out a lot of kind of crazy concepts they would have never considered before, like consciousness affecting reality.
Yes, quantum physics does open an avenue of exploration, and I firmly believe that quantum mechanics eventually will contribute a great deal to this area to help explain these things. Already we have theories on the multiverse and non-locality and wave particle function. Avenues are opening up to help explain these things. Where I'm disappointed is where medical science still finds it difficult to incorporate these ideas. But there are certainly physicists that are exploring these avenues into the nature of consciousness. The Institute of Noetic Sciences, for example, and Dean Radin, his organisation, are taking great strides. And there are conferences going. In fact, I'm going to a conference in November, Beyond the Brain, the Scientific Medical Network. And we have visitors coming over from the United States. Larry Dossey is a well-known speaker on the subject. So there's a lot going on in investigating the nature of consciousness, and it brings it all together.
Well, a neurologist would have to be fascinated with the idea of looking at somebody's brain. They would love to put somebody under a scan to look at the brain, how it functions when it goes when it splits, either in their ideas as a split personality or your idea of a spirit influence in it. It would be interesting to have a neurologist look at that, look at somebody's brain, how it changes during those altered states.
Well, neurologists are looking at this. Experiments were conducted by Brazilian researchers. I've referenced this in my book, where they looked at in fMRI scanners, they looked at the brains of mediums engaged in automatic writing.
Right. That's a form of possession, isn't it? I mean, it's taking over somebody's hand. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've witnessed this firsthand.
Me too.
I've seen people go into trance and be taken over and possessed by a spirit that's used the hand for writing. And it's a very, very common phenomenon. And it's interesting that scientists are taking notice of this and observing what happens to the brain during this process. Yeah. There are great strides being taken, really. We must be positive about scientific research into this area.
That's what I'm saying. It's just like, I feel like we're still in the dark ages, because they look at it as the dark ages when we talk about spiritualism, but I feel like they're the ones in the dark ages because they can't open their minds to these concepts and just look into it. You talk about, the automatic writing, that can be considered a positive or an invitation to possession. In a positive way, to communicate, or channeling. So these are we were talking about people who positively seek possession in a way. I mean, that's what they're doing when you're channeling somebody, right?
Yes. Yeah. I've seen automatic writing in the positive and the negative.
Yeah, true. There's people that, of course, have said, I got possessed by a demon when I started messing with that Ouija board or that automatic writing, and now I'm possessed by 6 different demons. I'm not trying to make a joke of it. I am, but it's the truth of the matter. The people warned, Malachi Martin, warned, stay away from the occult, stay away from trying to communicate with spirits. You're inviting them.
Well, there's a modern trend in people using similar devices to the Ouija board, but more technological. People experimenting with electronic voice phenomena.
We will be next Sunday. We do it live on the show.
Well, I've had several cases come to me for a resolution where they've experimented with these instruments, and they've invited spirits to communicate with them and been seriously affected by some really negative stuff, and then needed help getting rid of it.
You can't see him, but Rob in our panel is raising his hand up there because he's one of those ITC experimenters that's brought plenty of weird negative probably into his home. We've seen it on camera. We've seen a black shadow go behind him on camera. Because we do these, Terry. I only let my wife only allows me to experiment with ITC once a month, and that's the show we do. It's not even once a month; it's like once every other month. But
the important thing is that you must know how to protect yourself, and this is one of the things that I teach when I'm running training courses for practitioners to learn these techniques. The first thing they are taught is how to protect themselves, and it doesn't matter what form of spirit communication you're talking about. You need protection from the dark.
I mean, there's plenty of people, when I would tell people when they kind of, I would be messing with that ITC or those spirit boxes. That's just like doing a Ouija board. What's the difference? I'm like, there isn't a difference. It is the same thing. But there's people
the same thing.
Yeah. There's people who practice and use the Ouija board for decades and never had a negative experience because they protect themselves. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Not saying I know what I'm doing, but I try.
It's easy. Like me, for an example, you do it, and you let your guard down, and you don't think about protecting yourself. And next thing you know,
diligence is what you need.
Yeah. Learn the hard way.
Yeah, exactly. But there is a positive, though. There is positive possession. Edgar Casey, the automatic writing, people that do miraculous things. I mean, solve cases with that, or channeling. So there's this positive side to it. Now, to protect yourself, like if somebody wants to get into channeling, there's the danger, but that you can do it. You can protect yourself and experience this. And so, do you think we were meant to? Were we meant to be able to let spirits possess us? Is it the nature of things?
Well, going back to basics, each and every one of us is a spirit that possesses a human body.
Right.
So we're all possessing spirits. And as such, the human body can be possessed by any number of different types of spirit if you let your guard down or if you invite them in. You just need to have the knowledge, really.
One of the things that I wonder about, on the positive side too, is when I was in my early 20s, I befriended a family who belonged to a church that believed in speaking in tongues. They were a beautiful family, nice people, and they invited me to their church, knowing I'm a complete agnostic, and that I question everything, and I basically don't ever see myself subscribing to any religion anytime soon. They invited me there to see their church because they understood I was open-minded to their ideas. I'm not an atheist. So I went and I witnessed them speaking in tongues, and it wasn't any language. I'm not a linguist, but I don't think it was any language, and it was definitely vocal. And I felt like these people were having very positive experiences from this. It changed their lives. Some of them. This family moved because they were kicked out of their church for doing it. They didn't believe in it. Their mother, one day in the middle of church, started speaking in tongues, and their church was against it, and she didn't even know what she was doing, didn't even remember it. And they got kicked out of the church, and that's why they moved up here to join a church that did believe in it. And it was a very positive experience. But I always wondered, they invited the Holy Spirit in. What is that entity that they're inviting in? Have you ever had any of regression or done any therapy with somebody who belonged to a church that spoke in tongues, or ever found any information what that is that's possessing them there in that church? It's such a positive influence on their life.
Well, the short answer to that is no. I've never had a case where a person's been speaking in tongues. I've only ever witnessed it once, and that was a woman who became possessed. She was definitely possessed by something that was not very nice, because she was being
so this is not positive influence in speaking in tongues. This is the bad speaking in tongues.
This was not positive at all.
Yeah.
And I don't really know whether it was speaking in tongues, but she was babbling in a language that I didn't understand at all. But I've never had a case presented to me that claimed to be speaking in tongues, so I can't really comment on it, I'm afraid.
But you've seen the videos, though. I'm sure you've seen the videos of these ministries that speak in tongues, and seen people doing it before, right? You've seen the videos of that.
Yes, you see, if I witnessed something like that, I would need to know who owned the voice and who owns the language. What's the origin of this?
Well, that's what I always wondered about it. Nobody's ever taken any of these when they speak in tongues and never found any language that it relates to. So that's why skeptics will be like, well, it's just mumbo jumbo coming out of their mouth.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can't say it is mumbo jumbo coming out of their mouth. I don't know.
See, my scientific inquiring mind would need to know its origin. It's a bit like receiving a telephone call out of the blue. You answer the phone. What's the first thing you want to know? Who it is and what they want. Isn't it? It's a natural question, isn't it? Who are you? What do you want? All right, that's how I answer the phone. Who are you? What do you want? It may not be a very polite way of answering the telephone, but these are questions that must be answered. So if someone's speaking in tongues or babbling in a language you don't understand, you need to know the origin.
Well, for them, it's the God, it's the Holy Spirit. That's the origin. I don't buy it.
No,
there's part of me that wonders if it's a little bit sinister.
No, I don't buy that either, because positive spirit, good spirit, will make itself known, and if it doesn't give a name, if it's a good spirit, it will give a name. If it doesn't want to give a name, then don't have anything to do with it.
Well, it makes you wonder what they're experiencing, because it's not just one person; it's a whole group of people. That's what fascinates me about it.
And that would cause me to be suspicious. And there have been ethnographic reports from anthropologists where whole groups of people have.
Right.
There was a case in Africa of a school, 16-year-old schoolgirls.
Yeah, we've covered that on this show. There's not just Africa; it's been South America too.
Yeah, and I was at a conference where I was speaking to a Finnish anthropologist who was on such an expedition to investigate one of these cases, and I said to him, "Did you communicate with the possessing spirits and ask them what they wanted and who they were?" And he looked at me as if I was crazy, and he said, "Well, why would I want to do that?" To me, this is the first question you ask. Where is this from?
Right, and imagine if they just asked that question to these girls in this frenzy, this hysterics, and they did reply separately, and they were getting the same answers from all the different girls. That would be freaky.
So I'd love to be presented with a case like that, because I feel that I have the
I would love for you to too, because there's been a number of we do the World Wide Web of Weird every Sunday night before the guest interview, and we've had a number of these stories of these school possessions of these girls, and we've showed the video of them and them going nuts. I mean, just flaying everywhere and probably speaking in some kind of tongue of some kind. I don't know. I can't tell because it's South America, or it's Africa, so I wouldn't know if they're speaking their language or speaking in tongues, but it'd be great if somebody was like you there that has an experience and knowledge to be able to approach this situation and find out what is possessing these girls.
What amazes me is that no one is taking the research into this business seriously.
You would think an anthropologist would be really interested in this, because what is the societal factors? This isn't happening in America. It's happening in Africa. It's happening in South Africa. My take on anthropology, and I've known a few anthropologists. I'm curious, really, as to how anthropologists can go about their work, just treating these phenomena as a cultural curiosity without investigating the causes of it. Just reporting it as a cultural curiosity is not enough. Prove it as a cultural curiosity. Prove that. They don't even prove it to me.
No, they don't. No.
It's just just an excuse for the instant. That's all it is. It doesn't actually give me proof that's what it is. It could be just as much a demonic thing going on. There's no proof there. There's nothing scientific about their explanation. That's what drives me nuts about it.
No, all they do is report what they see and give their interpretation according to the knowledge that they have, which is insufficient. They need to gain new knowledge from inquiring further.
Exactly. We need more of that, because we're talking about to me, it's the key to understanding the universe and who we are and why we're here is understanding these kind of phenomenon.
The way I would approach such a case would be to work with mediums and say, okay, let's stand back from this. You can't investigate it if you're too close, because you can get drawn in and get infected. It's like treating a contagious disease. You need protection, and you need to look at it from a distance and say, right, what exactly is going on here? And you bring in spiritual resources that have the knowledge, and you gain your knowledge from them. You don't go in and get your hands dirty. You ask the right questions of the right sources of information, and you get to the root of the problem. To me, it's a simple process.
And the way I look at things, the way you look at things, I look at like, oh, what does this mean, and what do we get in this? You go right to what's the problem with the person? How do we help them? Because that's your mission, and that's what I love about you and what you're doing. And we need more of that, because you got to imagine how many people are out there in mental institutions and prisons that are suffering right now. That are nobody's going to help them. Nobody's going to understand. They don't even know what's happening to them. Imagine how it could revolutionize society if we accepted these concepts and explored them.
But that's an interesting question that requires a bit of thought, really. Just imagine, right, Jay? Just imagine for one moment if all the inmates in all the prisons in the United States and all the inmates in all the psychiatric hospitals in the United States were to be investigated properly using this scientific method to see whether they were infected in some way, and it was revealed the truth, right? What impact would that have on the institutions?
I think it put a lot of them out of business, especially the pharmaceutical companies, and I would praise the day that would happen.
So can you see why the resistance is there?
Yeah, pharmaceutical companies wouldn't like you. They want to just keep pumping people full of drugs. I mean, look how many of the active shooters, all of them were on one of these pharmaceutical drugs.
Yeah.
Of course, they were crazy. They were on pharmaceutical drugs. But you know what? No, we need to look deeply at how this affected this person.
When you get a serial killer or a mass murderer, a kid going around a school with a machine gun, rather than looking at the gun laws in the United States, let's look at what's affected that person to cause him to do that.
Of course, no, we have to make it political. We have to make it a weapon to get some stupid agenda across that doesn't even address the damn problem. Sorry, I'm very passionate about that one.
But you're right. Politics gets in the way. It's an absurdity.
It is. I think we got another call in line, which if I do, did I hang up on them by accident? Uh-oh. Oh, hold on one second. Let me get them back. I don't know if that was Sideline or if that was Skype. Hold on 1 second. I hit the dang button to take their call, and it cut out on them. Missed call. Let me try calling this person back that just called in. Let me see. That was my bad. Sorry for the caller. I didn't mean to hang up on you. See if we get them. But yeah, it would, how society would change, how you would put these places out of business, especially the pharmaceutical companies, if we were able to actually help people. I hope we can get them on, because we're going to run out of time if not. Maybe not. I'm ringing them. Oh, I see. Harry, hello. Sorry, I don't know. I hung up on you by accident. We got just a couple minutes left if you got a question for our guest.
Just one quick question. Dr. Palmer, I was wondering if you had ever heard of somebody who had a near-death experience, and at the time that they returned to their body, there was a second soul that, I don't want to say possessed the body as well, but basically joined with the original spirit.
So basically, they picked up something during a near-death experience. And sorry, who do we have calling in? I didn't get a chance to ask that.
Hi, this is Mike in Montana.
Oh, hey, Mike. You definitely want to hear that. Thank you so much for calling in. That's a great question, too. Can somebody pick up something from a near-death experience?
Hello, Mike. I've not had personal experience of a case like that, but I would not discount the possibility at all. Because when our spirit leaves our own body, it's like stepping outside of your house and leaving the front door open. Anyone can walk in, couldn't they? And when a person has an out-of-body experience, a similar thing can happen, yeah.
Yeah, I drowned at 6 years old, and long before I ever heard anything about any of this stuff. Back in '68, I was a 6-year-old kid. The moment that my heart stopped, I had a quick life review, and then
at 6 years old, it'd be quick.
Yeah, it was pretty short. It was like the highlights, just a few of them, and then I was seeing this light, and there were all these other little lights heading towards this conglomeration of lights. That's the only way I can describe it. It was like everybody had a lighter or a flashlight or whatever, and they were all standing so tight together you couldn't see anything but light. But you could see light coming towards it and going away from it.
Wow.
So when I was being revived, I felt myself being pulled away from the light. And as I headed away from the light, I saw this other light next to me, kind of like just following me all the way back to the body. And it never made sense then, and I don't know if it really makes sense now.
Wow.
It was just something that was unexplainable to me because I couldn't even describe it to my parents back then.
Well, Mike,
so I was just curious if anybody had ever heard something like that.
You got to call in a lot sooner, man. With that, you have great calls. You got to call in sooner because we got to end the show. So that's
all right.
Both times you called in, man, they always have such a good story.
Question.
Thank you so much, Mike. You have a great night. But yeah, you wonder when somebody does cross over if they are going to, you got to think that's got to be a possibility too. Well, Terry, again, thank you so much for being on the show. I want to give you a second here to give out any information you want to get to the audience, or if you contact information.
Well, the only information I'd like to share with your audience is that the cases that are brought to my attention and my colleagues are steadily on the increase. We're becoming overwhelmed, swamped with people asking for help. So more cases is not what I need.
We need more doctors like you.
Yeah, what we do need are more practitioners that are able to deal with the cases. So we've embarked on a training program to teach people how to do this, and this was initiated a couple of years ago in Michigan, in Battle Creek, where I worked with some people who wanted to learn how to do this. So we've been developing it in the UK, and it's a program that I want to develop and expand and help more people learn how to do this. And at the same time, as each case that we work on is recorded, then the invitation is extended to scientific institutions, to mental hospitals, psychiatric clinics, and prisons even. But any institution that feels that they could benefit from analysing the data that we're collecting.
They got to give it a shot at some point. Because obviously what they've been doing for the last couple hundred years hasn't been doing any good for, I just don't think it has. Well, thank you so much, Terry. You've been an incredible guest. Thank you so much for the book. I'd love to have you on again in the future. So you have a great night, and enjoy the rest of your day. Good morning.
Well, when I come to visit Chicago, we'll meet face to face.
Definitely.
Thank you for the invitation, Jason.
Well, thank you. You have a great night. Well, that's it, guys. That's the last of the show. We will be back next Sunday, the Halloween show, October 28th, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern. We are going to have the Paranormal Soup team, Jamie, Rob, Bill, Jeff, And then we will have Katrina and Rhodey, our annual Halloween guest, and they always have great costumes. I will be in a costume probably. But we're going to have Heather Wade. As far as I know, we're going to have Heather Wade who's going to join us for some World Wide Web of Weird, Best Ghost of World Wide Web of Weird, and ITC, Spirit Box Sessions. You can call into the show and see if the spirits will talk to you. And you can talk to Heather, but we're going to see if the spirits can talk to you. And you know what? If you got a good ghost story that night, I'd love to hear it. That's Halloween. Come on. You got a good ghost story? Call in with it. All right, guys, that's it for the show. You see you next Sunday. Same bad time, same bad channel. 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Central, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific time. See you then. Don't forget to go to Late Night in the Midlands Network. Donate, subscribe, help keep this network alive. Without you, we wouldn't have all these great shows and these great hosts. All right, guys, see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Paranormal Super here on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. Be sure to catch us here each week, Sunday night, 11 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Pacific.